for Research Infrastructure and Work Program 2018-2020. This info day is co-organized by the RICH network and the Research Infrastructure Unit from the DG RTD and DGCNECT. And concerning the session, today we have two sessions, a plenary session during the morning and parallel session during the afternoon after the lunch. Okay, so presentation will be done by EC representative concerning the different call of the work program 2018-2020. And after we have coffee break and after a roundtable with project testimony. And at the end, the presentation of the rich services that the NCP network provide to proposal and clients. After you have the lunch is at the first floor, and after for the afternoon session, we have a parallel session on the different call, moderated by NCP and also with EC representatives. So it's an occasion, the opportunity to discuss more focus about the call and to more understand the expectation of the call, okay? And the session ends at 5:30 maybe. And you have the different, the parallel session are in the different room. The Gagarin room, it's at the second floor, and the room Colombe, and I think Da Gama, it's at the first floor, close to the lunch room, okay? So I wish you a fruitful meeting, and I have a personal message. I dedicate this info day to Marit and Monique. Thank you. And good morning for the people who are on the web streaming too. So I give the floor to Philippe. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning to all of you. First of all, let me present myself. My name is Mr Froissard. I'm the Deputy Head of the Research Infrastructure Unit in DG Research Innovation. So as I said, I would like to welcome you here in Brussels for this info day. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the RICH Consortium and more particularly the team which is behind the organization of this event for the excellent work they have done in putting together this very interesting agenda for the meeting today. I really think that this meeting, this event, exemplifies the contribution that national contact points can bring in promoting the activities of Horizon 2020, in facilitating the access to information by researchers and more particularly newcomers and new potential proposers, and finally in sharing experience and good practices between proposers, something that is very important in light of the new activities that we have identified and we have introduced in our work program. So today we will present to you the Research Infrastructure Work Program 2018-2020. This is an important program. We will present to you numerous calls. We have 6 calls, many topics. We will be talking about budget, 1.1 billion for all these topics and all these calls that are included in the work program. It's actually nearly half of the budget that has been allocated to research infrastructures in the whole of Horizon 2020. So it shows the size and scale of the commitment that the Commission puts in supporting research infrastructures in Europe. But I think what we would like to do in this event today is, beside the presentation of the calls, it's to stress that what we provide are opportunities. Opportunities for research communities to develop new research infrastructures, opportunities for networks of research infrastructures to integrate further and provide excellent services to users, opportunities for research infrastructures to develop their innovation potential, to develop their international outreach to new users outside Europe, opportunities for e-infrastructures to deploy their services and develop new services, I mean, these are just examples of opportunities that we would like to address in our program. I am confident that our program will and can deliver on all the issues that I raised here. And I hope, or I trust, that by the end of the day, you too will be as convinced as I am that this program will deliver. Now, I should say that the success of an info day such as the one we are in today depends a little bit on the skills of the organizers. I have no problem that they have the necessary skills for that. A little bit on the skills of the speakers. I certainly have no doubt that the speakers are excellent. But depends a lot on you, participants, because this is an info day. That means that we provide to you information, and in return, if you have questions, you should ask them. You should not be shy. You should come with questions. I cannot guarantee to you that today we will bring answers to the questions that you have. But please, be proactive, ask the questions, and what we will do is we will in any case develop answers. We will compile them into what we could call frequently asked questions, and we will post them on the RICH Consortium website. So, as you understand, to conclude, I would say that I rely on your interaction today so that this info day is a success. Thank you in advance for your participation. And I think I have to introduce the new speakers, who is the first speakers, unless you want to say a few words.
Hello everybody, I'm Daniela Mercurio and I'm from Apre, Italy. I'm a national contact point for the research infrastructure program, and I'm supporting Monique Bossi, that is the coordinator of the RICH project. And I just would like to say that we thank you all of you for your participation to this event, and of course the European Commission that support us in taking knowledge of this program. And of course this knowledge we will try to transfer to you as potential applicant of the RI course. And well, it's just to start, we have to start with the program, and I let the European Commission to present the course for the next years. Thank you.
Good morning again. Here in a new capacity, presenting to you the program. I'm quite happy actually today that I will not have to present the entirety of the work program 2018-2020, because you can believe me, it is an experience. And it actually shows the diversity and the complexity of the different activities that we have in our program. But hopefully today, this morning, I will be supported by a number of my colleagues that will in turn come to the stand and present different sections of that work program. So I will only restrict myself to those activities that are under the direct responsibility of DG RTD, and those activities that are concerning more specifically the support to research infrastructures under the first, the third, and the last call. So let me start first with a statement which is of interest not only to our colleagues coming from the UK, the British applicants that may be interested in applying and participating in activities that will be launched in the course of the next few weeks, but to everyone, because you may be aware that the UK is an active participant in the research infrastructures part of Horizon 2020. It's the second largest beneficiary of our activities, and it's very obvious that the Brexit will have an impact, or can have an impact on the future participation of British applicants to our activities. And I'd like to read out what is the statement that was published by the Commission on the participant portal.
You have to know that until the UK leaves the EU, EU laws continues to apply to and within the UK when it comes to rights and obligations. This includes the eligibility of UK legal entities to fully participate and receive funding in Horizon 2020 actions. So what that means is basically, for us, it's business as usual when it comes to the participation of UK participants to the upcoming calls. There is, however, an additional information on the eligibility criteria that must be complied with for the entire duration of the grant. If the UK withdraws from the EU during the grant period without concluding an agreement with the EU, ensuring in particular that British applicants continue to be eligible, they will cease to be eligible to receive EU funding. I think this is the only thing that from the Commission side we will say about this. What I do invite you to do, on the other hand, is to consult the website that is managed by UCRO, the research office of the UK here in Brussels, because they provide a lot of additional information which is of interest to those of you that would like to involve British applicants, or if you are a British applicant and you are interested in applying to some of our activities. So you will get there much more information that we would in any case provide. What I would like to insist on is on the fact that for us, we will apply strictly the statement that has been presented to you here. That means that when it will come to the evaluation, there will be no discriminatory measure against proposals that include British participants. That said, I'd like to go to the description of the different calls that we have in our work program. We have 6 calls, as I said in the introduction. The first one concerns the development of pan-European research infrastructures and their sustainability. A big call, which is a joint call between DGCNECT and DG RTD on the implementation of the European Open Science Cloud. And here I should explain a little bit the color coding that we have. I went to a lot of work, and I should not say that, I know, but I still say that, to present to you the fact that quite a significant part of our program is a joint collaboration between DGCNECT and DG RTD. That means that quite many of our calls are actually calls which include activities that will be implemented in Connect and in RTD. That means that there is a lot of cooperation between the two services of the Commission in the preparation, and there will be a lot of cooperation in the implementation of these actions. Then we have a call on the integration and opening of research infrastructures of European interest, the usual integrating activity scheme that we have had in the past work programs and in the past framework programs. A call on European data infrastructures, a call on innovation, more specifically on innovation, and last but not least, a call which includes all the activities that we would like to support on policy and international cooperation. Let me go through the description of the first call, but first of all, I'd like to stress that the work program that we are presenting to you today is a work program which lasts 3 years, which is a novelty. All the previous work programs were over 2 years. And that has a consequence on the description of the activities that we have in our work program. We are actually providing a full description of the topics for the years 2018 and 2019. And we only provide sketchy information on the topics that will be covered under the work program 2020. So we only provide the titles and the budget, the indicative budget for these topics. The reason being that they have not been described fully yet at this stage. They have not been discussed with our program committee. And this is something that we will be doing in the course of next year. So only then will you be able to see the full description of these topics, which will be published and open in 2020. Concerning the first call on the development and long-term sustainability of new pan-European research infrastructures, you will find there activities that we had in the past under this same call in the previous work programs. The whole objective is to facilitate and support the preparation and implementation of S3 projects and other world-class research infrastructures so as to respond to the grand challenges in science, industry, and society. We have a number of topics there for that purpose. The first one concerns the design studies. The second one provides support to the preparatory phase of new S3 projects, which will be identified by S3 in the next few months. And then we have a specific topic providing support individually to S3 projects and other world-class research infrastructures. Let me go through the description of the first topic on the design studies. It's very much continuation of the previous calls that we have and previous topics that we had on design studies. I think the specificity of this action is, first of all, that it is fully bottom-up, and that means that there is a consequence to that. There is usually a high oversubscription. It's quite a competitive call. That means that you have to stick very closely to the scope and objective of the topic if you want to stand a chance of being successful. The purpose of this action is to support the conceptual and technical design of new research infrastructures. So it's about research infrastructures, not components of a research infrastructures. It addresses either new or upgraded research infrastructures, research facilities, and what is important is you have to demonstrate in your proposal the relevance and the advancement with respect to the state of the art. Important, why? Because, as I said, there is a lot of competition, so you have to explain what is the added value of your proposal in that context of designing new research infrastructures. What we have done with respect to the previous calls is that we have increased the budget. We have actually a 50% increase of the budget with respect to the previous call that we had in the work program 2016-2017. This topic will have one single deadline in 2019, but the budget will be spread over 2 years, in 2019 and 2020. That means that in practice, what we will have in the evaluation for the call, we will have a first list of proposals which will match the budget that is available in 2019, and we have a long reserve list that we will use to absorb the budget of 2020. So there will be only one main list and one reserve list for that topic in the last 3 years of our program. Regarding the second topic, InfraDev 2, for the support to the preparatory phase of S3 projects, here we rely extensively on the outcome of the S3 process. You are aware that S3 is updating its roadmap. The last update was in 2016 and was published in Amsterdam in March 2016. Now we are in the stage where the proposals, new proposals coming from the member states have been received. They are being evaluated, and we expect some outcome of the evaluation of these proposals by the middle of next year. What we will be doing in that case, we will look at the outcome of the evaluation, and we will adapt our call to match the number of proposals that have been identified by S3 as new proposals with the budget that we will allocate to the topic. So the idea really for the support to the preparatory phase is to provide support in this early development phase of the S3 projects, helping them develop a business plan, establish legal structures, and so on. So it's very timely. It's for a short period of time. It's very focused as an activity. What we would like to do for this topic is to have, and what we will have, is we will have 2 deadlines. One in the beginning of 2019 to match the process of updating of S3, the S3 roadmap of 2018, and one at the end of 2020 to align with the updating of the roadmap which will take place in 2020. So as I said, it's very likely that the scope of the topic will be fine-tuned in the coming few months depending on the outcome of the road mapping process which is carried out presently by S3. The third topic that we have under this call concerns the individual support to S3 projects and other world-class research infrastructures. That's the meaning of this strange acronym, OCRIS. I'm very proud of that one. Well, we should patent it, actually. We are the only one to use it, so there are not going to be that many competition, but it's a specificity of our program, OCRIS. So the objective of the action is to facilitate and support the long-term sustainability and efficient operation of both S3 projects and other world-class research infrastructures. We target beneficiaries for this topic, which are the individual S3 research infrastructures and other world-class research infrastructures which have established a legal structure and governance at EU or international level. We open also the call to research infrastructures which have submitted a first step ERIC application before the closure of the deadline. What I think is important in the context of this topic is for the proposers to look very carefully at the recent documents that have been published on the sustainability of research infrastructures, and more particularly on the staff working document that the Commission has published in September on the sustainability, the long-term sustainability of research infrastructures. Because the issues that are addressed there will certainly be issues that will need to be looked at very carefully by the proposers when preparing their proposals. They are expected to provide not necessarily answers to all the recommendations and the issues that have been addressed, but at least some of them which are the most relevant for their proposals. What we will cover through this action concerns membership enlargement, international cooperation, testing and improvement of access provisions to users, innovation activities, more particularly linked to the participation and involvement of industry and SMEs, development and integration of the research partner facilities in the research infrastructure landscape. We have two deadlines, one in 2018 and one in 2019. We have a limited budget, 15 million in 2018, and we will have a budget a little bit higher, 45 million in 2019. The overall budget for the topic is 60 million, and we are talking here about support to research and innovation action. The indicative budget for the projects that will be selected is between 2 and 5 million. I think it's very important for this, for the proposers applying to this topic to remind themselves that despite the fact that it is a call that is targeted, that means that we pre-identify potentially the beneficiaries, it's a competitive call. There are more potential beneficiaries than there will be projects selected. So proposers, regardless of their type and origin, will be competing not only against themselves but against each other. So it is very important for the proposals to demonstrate the need for the support that they apply for and how this, in particular, will ensure the sustainability of their research infrastructures. To summarize for the InfraDev call, we have 3 topics, as I presented. The first topic concerns the design studies. The overall budget is 30 million, which will be with one single deadline in 2019. The InfraDev 2 for the support to preparatory phases of 48 million, with 2 deadlines, one in 19, one in 20, the first one being in January 2019. And the second one, which has yet to be defined in the update of the work program for 2020. And then we have a topic on support, individual support to S3 and other world-class research infrastructures for a total budget of 60 million, which is split over 2 deadlines, one in March 2018 and the second one in March 2019. Now let me go to the description of one single topic, or 2 topics I should say, of this second call concerning the implementation of the European Open Science Cloud. And then later on in the morning, you will hear from my colleague providing you a full description of the topics 1, 2, 3, and 5. So I will concentrate my presentation on the description of topic 4 and topic 6. Topic 4 concerns the connection of the S3 projects through clusters to the European Open Science Cloud. Earlier on this week, we had a presentation of the European Open Science Cloud call to S3 projects and ERICS. And one of my colleagues that was presenting this topic, that is present here on the high table, said very clearly to the participants that the cluster call that we have here is not a continuation of the cluster call that we had in the previous work programs. She's right. It's not. Because what we do through the cluster is to address and to tackle a specific mission. It has a specific task. It had a specific task in the past. It has a specific task now in the present work program, which is for the clusters of projects, of research infrastructures, to connect to the European Open Science Cloud. But they still share the same identity, which is the fact that they are handling and they are talking about data and management of data. But admittedly, this is a new task. So you should not regard that as a continuation of the existing activities that were implemented within the scope of the clusters that are presently running. And the reason for that is also that the coverage of the topic is different now than it was in the past. In the previous calls, we broadened the scope and the coverage of the clusters to a larger group of research infrastructures than the S3s, while here we focus our attention to S3s and international organizations. So the purpose of this action is to ensure stewardship of data handled by the research infrastructures in line with the FAIR principles. I'm not going to go through the description of what are the FAIR principles. I believe that you know probably better than me what FAIR principles are, but this is the idea of this topic. It's really to develop this better stewardship of the data which are managed by the research infrastructures in line with these principles. To expose the research infrastructure's data in tools under the EOSC catalog that will be developed in the coming few years. To address domain-specific issues that are affecting data sharing and reuse. The overall budget that we have here is 95 million, which will be provided to clusters which are grouped by domain, scientific domains. The domains are described in the call, in the topic, and there are 6 of them. The indicative budget for the clusters vary as a function of the number of research infrastructures that will be connected in the project. So it varies between 6 and 24 million. And we estimate that the cost of connecting the research infrastructures is between 1.5 and 2 million inside each of the clusters. So that's to give you an indication of what is the size of the activities and the size of the projects that we are dealing here for the clusters. A few words on the EOSC 6 topic, which has as an objective to enhance the European Open Science Cloud portal and connect the thematic clouds. I will only describe briefly the purpose of the first subtopic of this topic 6, which is the support to the EOSC portal, which will be the subject of a topic that will close in 2019. I'm not going to say much about the second subtopic because it will be fully described in the amendment of the work program in the course of next year for 2020. What has to be stressed, on the other hand, is that these two activities have to build on the results of past and ongoing projects. When it comes to the EOSC portal, for instance, it's very clear that there is connection between what we would like to support in this call with what is presently being implemented, both by a project that is managed by our colleagues from DGCNECT, which is called eInfra Central, and what will be implemented within the frame of a project that has been selected and which would start operating in January 2018, which is called EOSC Hub. So there is a lot of complementarities and continuation between the activities that will be done by this new initiative and these existing projects. The objective is to provide a fully functional, sustainable, and comprehensive user interface to the EOSC services. And as I said, it will build on the work that is presently done within the remit of the projects that have been supported in the previous programs. The indicative budget for this action is of 2 million, and we would expect only one proposal to be selected, and it will be a research innovation action. As for the second subtopic, the ID, just to outline the objective of this subtopic, is we will take stock of the fact that there are initiatives that have been launched or that will be launched very soon by the challenges in Horizon 2020 to develop thematic clouds. I mean, just to give you an example, it's very likely there will be what is called a blue cloud that will be created, which is in the making. And at some stage, there will be a need to connect these thematic initiatives with the EOSC, the European Open Science Cloud. And what we will do through this topic is precisely to provide support for this integration, interoperability and integration. So we expect to support a few projects with a limited amount of money precisely for this interoperability and integration. But as I said, it will be described in more detail in the upcoming amendments of the work program in 2019. Maybe I should not go through the description of that summary table because you are still missing a number of pieces in the jigsaw to make sense of this table. So we might come back later. Now, let me go through the description of the third call for the work program 1820. which is a well-known activity that we have been running in DG RTD for research infrastructure since many framework programs. It's called Integrating Activities. The objective is to open key national and regional research infrastructures to all European researchers and to ensure their optimal use and joint development. You know that the objective of the integrating activities is threefold. It's all about support to transnational access. It's about networking of research infrastructures and support to joint research activities for the purpose of improving the services to the users. It's not one or the other, it's all three together. So every project has to implement these three objectives. We have made a distinction in the past between what we call advanced communities, namely research infrastructures or networks of research infrastructures which have received support in the past, and what we call starting communities, new communities of users or research infrastructures which would like to integrate further in the context of the integrating activities. We maintain this distinction in the coming program, 18 and 20, between advanced communities and starting communities. Therefore, we'll have different topics, one for advanced communities and one for starting communities, and on top of that, there will be a pilot action that we would like to launch in the work program 2020 with the purpose of addressing, if not all, at least some of the issues that are faced by the advanced communities that have received support for a number of times from the Commission and that still have issues as regard support to transnational access. Concerning the advanced communities, so we are targeting infrastructures or networks of infrastructures which have already reached an advanced degree of coordination through previous support. We identify already in the work program the areas that are covered by these communities. There are about 20, a bit more, 23, I think, areas which have been identified for the deadline 2018. When I tell you that there is a budget of 110 million for this deadline and that the indicative budget for each proposal is about 10 million, you understand that there is, again here, in this case, competition between the proposals that will be submitted under this topic, despite the fact that the areas have been identified. And this is a call that has two deadlines, one in 2018 in March, and one in 2019, for which we have not yet described in the work program the areas that will be covered, because we are still in the process of finalizing this list, and this is something that we will submit to our program committee in the beginning of next year, or in the first half of next year. I think what is very important for this topic for advanced communities is for the proposers to address really the novelties with respect to the previous grants that they received. It's not about business as usual. They should certainly not resubmit the same proposals that were successful in the past, because things have changed, not only in the research landscape in the meantime, but also in our program itself. That means that we expect from these communities different things that we were expecting maybe a few years ago. And in particular, there are new challenges that we would like them to address in their projects that are certainly new with respect to the previous activities. In particular, for instance, the sustainability is an issue that we want them to address well, because we consider that they are at a stage of integration which is such that they should be able to sustain the services that they provide to the users without additional commission support, and they have to be able to demonstrate how they will go about that. There is also an explicit reference to European Charter of Access, which we would like them to adopt systematically for all research infrastructures that will be involved in the networks that will be supported by the integrating activities. And of course, there are some explicit references to the connection to the European Open Science Cloud and the services that will be provided by the EOSC. Concerning the topic for starting communities, it will be a two-stage call. That means that we will have a first deadline for the first stage in 2019. Then there will be a short list of proposals that will be invited to submit the second stage application, which will be evaluated in 2020. It is a bottom-up approach, completely bottom-up process. There is no pre-identification of what are the areas that we would like to target in these starting communities. As a consequence, it's very likely that there will be many proposals. That's the reason why we have this two-stage approach, in order to streamline a little bit the process and mitigate the impact of rejection to the proposers, at least in the first stage. The emphasis is put on the networking, standardization, and common access procedures, as well as complementarity and coherence with existing European research infrastructure landscape. I'm not going to describe the pilot that we would like to launch in 2020, because as I explained before in other occasions, this is something that we will develop further in the course of next year. To summarize, for the integrating activity call, we have about 230 million that will be dedicated to support to advanced communities. There will be two deadlines, one in March 2018, one in March 2019. There will be a call, a two-stage call for starting communities, and there will be a pilot action on integration that will cover the whole of 160 million roughly, which will be addressed in several deadlines, one in 2019 and 20 for the starting communities, and one by the middle of 2020 for the pilot on access. The call 5 is about innovation. So here we have different initiatives, different topics. The first one I will not describe because this is something that will be presented, I believe, by my colleagues from Connect. It's on the innovation potential of SMEs. The second one I will present is the network of industrial liaison officers. And then I will just touch upon the two pilots that we would like to implement in 2020 on innovation. Regarding the topic on the network of industrial liaison officers, this is a new topic, which purpose is to support the establishment of a network of industrial liaison and contact officers engaged with pan-European research infrastructures such as S3s and other relevant world-class research infrastructures of European interest. The purpose of this action is not to set up industrial liaison officers, is to actually use the industrial liaison officers that have already been established by the research infrastructures and make sure that they exchange good practices, they have common protocols, they develop training sessions together. This will be across domains because these research infrastructures do not necessarily come from the same scientific domain, and that's the added value of the initiative, to make sure that actually different research infrastructures from different scientific domain, research domains are involved. The idea is really to develop awareness campaigns, to reach towards the industry and the SMEs. What we would like to do as well in this topic is to support the development of a portal which will identify the calls and the tenders or the future needs that will be launched or identified, which have been identified by the research infrastructures, so as to highlight the opportunities in a number of technology domains that can be identified, developed further by industry suppliers. The scope of the initiative is about 1.5 million, and it's going to be a coordination support action. The two pilots on innovation that will be implemented in the work program 2020. The first one concerns the co-innovation platform for research infrastructure technologies, which will be focused on detection and imaging technologies. It's very much a follow-up of an initiative that was launched in the work program 16-17 and which led to the selection of a project called Attract. And what we would like to do through this initiative is to provide a follow-up of this action in a similar domain of detection and imaging technology. But as I said, like all the other pilots that we will have in 2020, this will need to be further developed in the coming few months. And the second pilot that we would like to do will target large communities of research infrastructures together with industry and SMEs for the implementation of strategic roadmap and develop joint research activities in key technologies for their development and upgrades. This is something that should be covered in 2020. To summarize for this innovation call, one action of 1.5 million for the network of industry liaison officers, and 60 million for the 2 pilots on innovation. I'm coming close to the end of my presentation. It's the 6th call of the work program, which is on policy and international cooperation. We have, under this call, different types of actions for policy support and international cooperation outreach. I will go through the description of the topic by year, starting with the deadlines of 2018. In 2018, under this call, for these topics, we will have 1 research innovation topic for the support to the development and installation of a specific beamline located at the Sesame synchrotron in Jordan. This is a continuation of a commitment that the Commission has made towards the support of the operation of Sesame. In the past, we provided support for the development of new magnets that has allowed the operation of Sesame. We are presently supporting training activities with Sesame and in cooperation with other European synchrotrons, which is called Open Sesame. And with this action, what we would like to do is to support the development of a new beamline that will be installed, that will be commissioned, installed, and operated in Sesame. The budget for this initiative is about 6 million, and we have a deadline in 2018 for this action. As for coordination and support actions, there are a whole list of initiatives that we have under this call. The first one concerns the support to the RICH network, which I should call now the RICH Forum, because it has changed a little bit its title. You might be aware that we have established so far 17 RICs. RICs standing for European Research and Infrastructure Consortium. It's a European regulation that allows for the establishment of legal structures in Europe for research infrastructures. We have 17 of those, and the number is increasing. And all those RICs are subject to, or let's say, they are experiencing in their early phase operation some issues that they find useful to share between themselves because they are established in many different countries. Therefore, they are confronted with many different national laws and issues that they have to resolve for their operation, and it's very important that we establish and we structure the dialogue between the RIC projects so as to improve the implementation and operation not only of these RICs, but the new and upcoming RICs that will be established in the coming few months and few years. The second activity that we would like to support concerns the international visibility of European research infrastructures. This is something that has been identified as an issue through the consultations that we launched in the recent few years on the long-term sustainability of research infrastructures. Most of the research infrastructures, including the S3s, indicated that they were suffering from a lack of visibility abroad, and they wanted to increase their visibility and the services that they provide to users outside Europe. And we would like to do through this activity to support them in increasing that visibility in an international context. We would like also to support a catalog of research infrastructure services. This is very much in line with what has been developed and that is being implemented presently by our colleagues from DGCNECT on e-infrastructures. So we would like to develop that for research infrastructures from physical services. And then we have two actions to support fora such as S3, the S3 Forum, and the EIRG. And we will provide support to the activities of these fora in the coming few years. The overall budget for 2018 is about 13 million. And as I mentioned, 6 million going to the research innovation action for supporting the development of the beamline at Sesame. In 2019, we have two specific actions on international cooperation. The first one concerns our cooperation with Russia. We are, as you know, probably involved in good bilateral cooperation with Russia on research infrastructures, and more particularly on cooperation with the mega science projects that the Russian authorities have developed. And the purpose of this initiative is to move one step further in our cooperation and to have a closer cooperation between the mega science projects and their counterparts in Europe, but also to extend this cooperation to a larger number of infrastructures than those that have been identified by the mega science projects. And we have now a list of more than 50 infrastructures that have been identified by the Russian authorities that they would like to open, in particular, to European researchers. And the purpose of this action will be to facilitate the access to these research infrastructures located in Russia by the European researchers. And the last action that we have identified, which is part of our international cooperation activities, is targeting our cooperation with Central American and Latin American countries. In the context of the EU-CELAC cooperation, we have created recently a working group as part of the EU-CELAC SOM on research infrastructures. And the idea of this action is to support the activities of the working group, and in particular in support the initiatives to identify priorities of cooperation on research infrastructures, and also provide some funding for exchanging staff between research infrastructures which are located in Latin America and their counterparts in Europe. The overall budget for the deadline in 2019 for this call is 27 million, 25 million being allocated to the topic for Russia, and 1.5 billion for the EU-CELAC coordination action. To summarize, for the InfraSup call, we have about 40 million over 3 years, and the breakdown is, as indicated, 6 million for Sesame, 25 million and 1.5 million for international cooperation on Russia and Latin America, and 6.6 million for all the support, the support to policy initiatives such as S3, internationalization, EIRGs, and so on. That's all I wanted to say. Now, I don't know how the organizers want to go about this session, if we take questions now, or if we go through all the presentations of the different calls and topics of the work program, and we wait till the end of these sessions to invite participants to ask questions. I'm depending on you, whether or not I stay. Questions now? Thank you. Yes. Well, you can shout.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the most practical thing. José María Carrasco from Track is in Madrid, and the question is on InfraSup 1D 2019 cooperation with Central and South America. Total budget 1.5, we understand, a tentative budget. Could you explain more if you are expecting one project, several projects?
Yeah. Okay.
The working group that you referred?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that question. We expect one project. Why? Because we would like, it's not about supporting individual research infrastructures. We would like to do that in the original context. I think we are at a very... It's actually the first time it happens to me. I'm afraid of responding to that question. Right. Okay. Okay. Where was I? Latin America. Latin America, yes. Okay, yes, obviously, it's an experience. All right, we are actually at a very early stage of our cooperation with Latin American countries. As I said, the working group has just been established. We had a preparatory meeting in Montevideo. We had a preparatory meeting. Maybe it's my phone, no? No, it cannot be. It cannot be me. We had a preparatory meeting in September with the Latin American representative, where we started to discuss what could be the scope of this cooperation, what could be the scope of the activities of the working group. We will have, in the coming few months, a meeting which will involve also representatives from the European member states, and I think this is something which is very important, because there, as representative of member states, you will be coming with also your own perspectives, and we have to acknowledge that quite a number of member states have already established long-lasting cooperation on research infrastructures with their Latin American counterparts, so we have to factor that in, and we will have to develop a roadmap of activities as part of the working group to see what should be done in priority. There are many ideas and many initiatives. I think in terms of domains, it's very clear that there are a number of scientific domains that are of interest to Latin American countries. They have to agree between themselves, which is a process that might take some time. We have to agree with them, which is another process that might take some time. So that's the reason why actually we have a deadline in 2019 and not before, is because this will take some time. We are very open in a sense that we would not like to restrict our cooperation to I was going to say traditional areas of cooperation, which could be regarded like, you know, environment or biomedical or agriculture, agro-food and things like that. I think we should be a little bit more challenging when it comes to research infrastructures, and actually also look for areas and scientific domains where we can have less expertise in Latin America, but precisely for the purpose of increasing their expertise and boosting their capacity in a number of scientific areas. So as I said, it's quite open. We have not identified or pre-identified the activities that will be implemented within the frame of the research infrastructure working group. We will develop that in the next few months. It will be made public, and of course we will inform the potential proposers for this activity of what will be the scope of the activities, so that they prepare their proposals knowing exactly what is expected of them. But as I said, we would expect normally one proposal, one project to be selected under this topic. I think I can move back to the usual spot. Yes? For the clusters, yes.
Yes, for clusters. I was wondering if this is exclusive only for SP research infrastructures to be involved, and how you expect proposals with respect to going between the different domains, so if there are clusters of more than one domain.
We cannot pretend that we will cover everything under this topic. We want to focus our attention to DS3 projects to start with. That's why we restrict the scope of the topic to DS3s. We restrict it on purpose to a number of scientific domains. It goes without saying that there will be a need at a later stage or in parallel to expand, to broaden the activities. But bear in mind that this topic is our contribution to the implementation of a recommendation that was identified in the European Cloud Initiative that was launched last year, where specifically the S3 projects were identified and their connection to the European Science Cloud was where the connection to the S3 project was identified in the European Cloud Initiative. So we are responding with this topic precisely on this recommendation.
No, so it's
So we've been recently granted for starting community.
Yeah.
We've been told that the next step would be to apply for an advanced community.
Okay.
Obviously, the project will start in 2018. The 2018 deadline is not, I mean, it's too early, right? And domains are not suited anyways.
Mm.
So from the 2019 deadline, to choose the domain, do you take into account the projects that you start in community that you recently funded?
It's one of the parameters that we may have to consider. Yes, the question, so I'm asking the questions and providing the answers because it's web streams, and since they cannot hear you, I will have to reformulate your questions. The question is coming from a starting community and whether or not their area, let's call it like that, will be called in the deadline 2019, despite the fact that the project has just started. I would say it could be a parameter that we take into account, but you are at a very early stage of the implementation of the community. So I would consider certainly your case, and the case of, but incidentally, congratulations, because there were quite many of you competing. So it's very good that you were successful. It proves very much that your proposal was an excellent quality. It's very much likely that the beneficiaries of the starting communities that are just being launched now will be called at a later stage. And then we have maybe to look at what will happen beyond Horizon 2020. Because as you know, there is something beyond the horizon. Might not be obvious, but there is. What we have, you know, there is something which is called a multi-annual plan that we are discussing with our program committee members, which lists all the areas that have been addressed and supported in the past through the integrating activities. And the proposals that we made to the program committee was to identify a number of areas already that were coming from the integrating activities for the pilots. And we'll see with them in the course of the next few months whether we need to maintain this pre-identification of domains or areas for the pilots, or we can enlarge it, or we can change it in light of the development of the pilot itself. Well, in any case, we are here all day for our scenes. So if you have any question and you cannot formulate it now, you can always come to us later during coffee breaks, during the lunch, and we will only be too happy to provide you with an answer. But I see that someone has a question here. Okay. So the question concerns I suppose you're talking from the perspective of a third country or an associated country?
No, not third country, associated countries.
Associated countries. So for the purpose of the ERIC, the question is the role of countries which, let's say, associated countries in ERICs, the ERICs as research infrastructures in the context of the establishment of the ERIC, and the connection with the integrating activities. So I'm just going to answer these two things. Associated countries can participate in ERICs, that's no problem. They have to comply with the rules of the ERICs and the rules of the regulation. We have examples of a number of associated countries that are participating in ERICs as members. There are quite many of them. So there are conditions linked to that, which indeed is linked to the recognition of the ERIC status in the countries. But quite a number of associated countries have gone through this process. But you have to go through that process if you want to be a member and be able to sign the ERIC. Now, there is absolutely no correlation with being an ERIC or not being an ERIC, or being an associated country or not being an associated countries, and the participation in integrating activities. Because in integrating activities, what we are looking for is a network of national and regional research infrastructures. There can also be pan-European research infrastructures involved, but it's mainly about national research infrastructures and regional research infrastructures, which can come from anywhere, incidentally, if I can use this opportunity to flag the international dimension of the integrating activity scheme. Not only do we welcome research infrastructures, national research infrastructures coming from member states or associated countries, but we do also welcome in the networks research infrastructures that come from third countries, including industrialized countries and BRICS. And I raise that because we are probably unique in Horizon 2020 in a sense that we do provide support to beneficiaries coming from industrialized countries and BRICS when they are research infrastructures, when they commit to open their infrastructures to European users. So their costs, when they integrate the network, when they provide access to European researchers, can be fully covered by the grant. It's not usually that you see these kind of things in Horizon 2020. So I wanted to flag it. Now I have to say also that when we inserted this condition in the work program, and I think we must have done it from the first work program. Was it 14-15? I think it was 14-15 already. We had this provision. A number of my colleagues were a little bit afraid that we would be submerged by hundreds of research infrastructures coming from abroad and wanted to integrate all those networks of European infrastructures, and all the money would disappear somewhere, I don't know, in India or elsewhere. We have to acknowledge that this opportunity that we have to involve and include third country research infrastructures in networks is seldom used. There are very few cases of research infrastructures located in third countries that are participating in the integrating activities. I regret that. So I really would like to take the opportunity of this meeting today to promote the fact that we are open, not only for the users accessing the infrastructures, but also we are open to integrating, including research infrastructures from third countries in the networks for integrating activity scheme. Shall we go to the next meeting? Next presentation. Next meeting, that's later.
Okay, the next presentation, please.
But you know where they are.
Yeah, I come. Which presentation is this? No, it's not this.
No.
Is a presentation of Philippe or?
No.
You cut your.
I removed them. You don't have them?
No, I have it.
I have it as well.
You have
it's easier if you can find it because it's impossible to find it online.
Okay.
Well,
Do you have,
if you want, okay, let me.
it wasn't on the final PPT? It wasn't this final PPT?
Yes.
Okay, I can have it. Okay.
I don't mind helping, but I don't want to present it. No, c'est pas ça. Non, non, attends.
Okay, or maybe because I have two of you. Okay, I think it's better like this.
On peut ne pas mettre sur l'écran, ceux qui n'ont fait plus
Ouais.
large.
Okay.
Va sur. Sur le truc là, Portugal, Lisbonne, machin, le truc Lisbonne, la présentation, c'est là la vidéo. Il y a toutes les slides.
Okay.
Yeah, that you have all the slides. But I only have the standard slides. I don't have the other slides.
No.
No, I don't have the ones that you presented on Monday, for instance.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so. Okay, I think it is, no, yeah, this
EOSC 5.
5. Okay. Sorry, okay, EOSC 5.
Okay, I leave the plans.
Okay. Okay.
How are you?
Okay, thank you. So, I give you the floor for the.
Hello. So I'm going to present the topic InfraEOS 05 that is for the support to the EOS governance and which is organized around 3 subtopics. So this topic has been prepared for a work program in Unit RTD-A6 who is working on the policy of the European Open Science Cloud. So to start with the first subtopic is the setup of the European Open Science Cloud coordination structure. This is a topic that is a subtopic that aims to support the operation of the framework, governance framework that we are defining and co-designing as a commission together with the member states. We are discussing around a governance framework structured on 3 different layers and main bodies of the governance for the cloud. One is more strategic and group together all the funders and member states and associated countries want to be part of this endeavor. Then there is going to be an executive body, which main task, responsibility, and mechanism of working we are detailing and, as I say, discussing with member states in specific committees of the Council. And then the wider body of stakeholders, let's say the dynamics and interactions among these 3 layers will be supported by this coordination structure that will serve to produce, let's say, the knowledge, also collecting information from the projects that are ongoing, like the ones that Philippe reminded about, you know, the EOS CAB, the EOS pilot that is going to run for its 2nd and final year now in 2018, and the E-Infra Central project, and all the others that will come out from these calls that all together contribute to the setup of the European Open Science Cloud. This coordination structure is called to collect all the input, to organize and structure the dialogue among the stakeholders, especially around working groups, thematic working groups, And in that way, the executive board and then will be able to summarize all this input into proposal for the member states that will sit on the, let's say, strategic body. And there will be a sort of prioritization also with the, thanks to the input from all the stakeholders. So the coordination structure will act pretty much in a form of a secretariat and overseeing this working group. That's why it's important. An important characteristic for this project is really to have a consortium of partners that can be seen as really trusted brokers from the whole community that can, put themselves at the service of the whole community into this task. This subtopic of the coordination structure, as compared to all the others that Philippe presented, as a political dependency at the moment. That means that it is consequent to reaching an agreement with the member states in due time that we have foreseen for end of December and beginning of in January 2018. So that the main lines of, and details of the works of the governance framework and the bodies and what they are going to do is clear enough and detailed into the roadmap that the Commission is going to present in that period, so end of 2017 and January 2018. In this way, the bidders will have the opportunities, the proposers, to have all the details necessary to draft this proposal. So we are aware that this political dependency is critical, and so this call, in case, the plans do not go in terms of timing like foreseen, and at the moment we are quite in line in this dialogue with the member states in reaching an agreement. It could have even some delay, but we hope that it doesn't have for the opening and the closing. So at the moment it's foreseen to open the Infraos 05 in January, just so 1 month after many other actions under the same call, and to close in April. Then in the subtopic B, we want to coordinate the relevant national initiatives. We know that in various member states there are already national plans for Science Cloud, Open Science Initiative, initiatives around verification of data, etc. And of course, everything with a different level of maturity. There are member states who are more advanced and countries in which there is willingness to participate since day one, but maybe not clear idea and plans yet. Through these actions, we want to really encourage this national initiative to work together, and support will be provided under this line of funding, and so that nobody is left behind, but each one can work in various groups around the identified priorities that they want to cover. The third subtopic is focused very much on the fair data uptake and the compliance in the scientific community. The FAIR principles are pretty much supported now across a wide range of scientific communities. There have been really a lot of work going on also in international fora concerning this concerning fair data, and we want really that some certification schemes are agreed upon, so that there are clear steps for all the data producer, data provider, service provider to understand what is the level really of FAIR and what these elements of FAIR means also in quantitative terms and qualitative terms. So more details here on so A, as I said, that the subtopic A aims at supporting the European Open Science Cloud Executive Board to coordinate the relevant activities funded under Horizon 2020, so to be a sort of a collector of the input and contribution and outcome of the different projects which in different work lines and are called to contribute and will be supported to contribute to the overall development of the EOSC. And to support decision-making process. So through the interaction of these governance bodies into this governance framework, really to facilitate decision-making that give stability to the community and give really a framework for progress and help very much in reducing the fragmentation so that there is really a coherent development of the European Open Science Cloud. So as I say, it is also the task of structuring the European Open Science Cloud community of stakeholders and to liaise with their countries that also are active in the area of Science Cloud and also have expressed interest in cooperation with Europe in this area. The indicative budget for the subtopic A is 10 million. As you can imagine, in order to have just one support to the governance, we foresee that we expect to have one proposal to be funded. So we really would like to have a solid and trusted consortium that can really do this task. So concerning the subtopic B, the national initiatives, as I said, we want to support a coordination, convergence and federation within the European Open Science Cloud of relevant initiative for open research data and services. It will be also important to have development of schemes in common to assess the level of interoperability and organizational readiness for a service provider, and to agree on minimum, let's say, service level agreement, minimum really requirements for service provider to operate, but also, offer some flexibility for communities which might require also very higher demanding level of service. This action will also map and harmonize the delivery of horizontal services that are really cross-border in nature and across the EOS provided in different member states. Proposal will build on, as also Philippe said, there are a lot of complementarities in this call, and we expect the project really to work closely together. The proposal will build on and complement the related work on the EOS CAB. So we encourage a close collaboration, as I said, with these big integrating projects that have already been funded. The budget for these actions is 30 million, up to 6 million per proposal, so we don't want a super big proposal on that. We understand that the needs across member states, the level of readiness or the priorities may be different. So with this breakout, we want to let them organize, so different national initiatives to organize around common priorities. But the budget is high enough, 30 million, to allow really every member state to be part of this and nobody to be left out. For the action on fair data, so as I said, it is relevant the implementation of a common scheme to ensure the fair data development, uptake and compliance. So to have a scheme of reference for fair data so that mechanisms for compliance are set in place. To facilitate coordination initiative on fair data in member states and associated countries, to develop and implement measures on fair data policy, and to develop and implement standards for data management, certification scheme for data repository, because the matter of trust and certification of data repositories is really very important for research communities, and especially for purposes of long-term data preservation, of availability of the data, retrieval, etc. To organize a competence center around FAIR, so also here, let's say, giving a support to the development of the profession of data scientists in Europe. To address the establishment of a European data science competence framework for inclusion in academic curricula. So the professional figure of the data scientist working really very close to the researcher in specific domains or in wider areas of scientific disciplines, and as a bridge also with the developers of digital and infrastructure services for the research. The researcher is very important, and this has been voiced very much by many scientific communities, and we want really to support this building up of curricula for data scientists. The indicative budget here for this fair data initiative is 10 million, and the actions foreseen are coordination and support actions. So I think I'm over with the Infra 05. I don't know if there are questions, specific questions on that. Yep. Done. Yeah. Yes, of course. I mean, in order to have. Yeah. So she's asking about really the work ongoing in terms of this dialogue and agreement envisaged with the member states. So to follow up on the declaration on the EOSC European Cloud Initiatives, that also includes the European Open Science Cloud as one of the main pillars. We, as service of the Commission, were asked by, let's say, our political masters, so also by the Commissioner, to prepare a roadmap for implementation. Of course, this roadmap for implementation, since it's very important and relevant and also touches upon the activities done in whole Europe that are heavily funded also by member states, it's important to achieve an agreement on the roadmap for the Open Science Cloud with the member states, who are still the main funders of these activities in Europe. A dialogue has started, and it was done mainly at operational level between the Commission and the standing working group of the ERA committee in the Council. We had a few meetings in the last few months with this committee of the Council, and now we are preparing to present the plans and main point agreed to the Research Working Party in the second week of December. That is still an higher level of a political body of the European Council, and to progress toward, let's say, the agreement of member states at ministerial level, of course, for these initiatives and for the setup of this governance. Anything else?
If there is no more question on this presentation, I'd like to thank Carmela for that presentation on the EOSC 5 topic. And to conclude the presentation of the topics for EOSC call, I'd like to invite Gina Serafim from DGCNECT C1 to present to you the first 3 topics of the call, namely topics 1, 2, and 3. Thank you, Gina.
Good morning. My name is Gina Serafim. I'm head of sector data policy for science in DGCNECT C1 unit E-Infrastructure and Science Cloud. And I will present you the first 2 topics in the InfraEOSC call. InfraEOSC 3 will be also under the responsibility of my unit, but since it is a 2020 topic, it is not yet developed in the work program. What I can say is that the indicative budget is 79 million, and it will be an integration call. Probably you know that we had this year an important integration integration call, which resulted in 2 projects. The call we will have in 2020 will build on the results of this first wave of integration, and we hope that with the results of the second call in 2020, we will arrive at a mature integration into one single pan-European access channel. Now, on InfraEOSC 01-2018, this is a topic which covers access to commercial services through the EOSC hub. In the logic of the work program, the EOSC hub will be the entry point to the services of the European Open Science Cloud, and it will be supported by a catalog of services which will hopefully address the whole research cycle and provide the tools to the researchers to conduct their activities. The challenge we would like to address with this topic is to help researchers to have access to state-of-the-art services, which sometimes are not made available by public infrastructures. So we want to pilot the development of a procurement capability for the EOSC, which will be able to integrate commercial services into the service offering of the EOSC. The indicative budget for this topic is 12 million, and I will detail later on when talking about the scope of the action. You will see that there are two categories of services. I would like to mention that a requirement in the work program is that we expect a balanced allocation between the two types of services. The scope of the action will be can be described into three categories of activities. First of all, research activities. We would like, in the first phase of the project, and actually continuously, this project will look into research. A researcher needs, will evaluate which of the services, commercial services that are available on the market can be useful for the researchers, which are the services which would complement the existing service offering, and launch procurement processes for these categories of services. And based on the feedback from users, continue this cycle and launch new procurements. Then there will be also work on technical integration of the services. The idea is to give access to researchers through the catalog of services of the EOSC hub. And in order to do this, of course, there will be work on integration, interoperability, standards, access rights, SLAs to be concluded. And the third category of activities is the actual service provision. We are aiming at providing a real access to researchers, not only developing the framework for the procurement activities, but giving real access to users to the commercial services. The action will cover two types of services: commodity type commercial digital services, like, for example, cloud services, and then it will also cover services stemming from the use of Copernicus data accessible through the DIAS platforms. For the first category, it's quite obvious what these services can be about, but maybe some of you are not aware of the DIAS platforms. This part of the action is the result of our cooperation and coordination with the colleagues in DG GROW of the Commission, who have stimulated through the Copernicus program the making available of this data, of the Copernicus data, and they procured some platforms which are called DIAS, which are supposed to enable service providers to develop a commercial offering, which will then be offered to the market, building on the data made available from Copernicus. With our grant, we intend to cover the cost of purchase for the services that our researchers would like to access from the DIAS platforms and make them available through the EOSC Hub catalog of services. So basically, the infrastructures will, and the EOSC Hub will be the intermediate layer between the commercial services, which will be developed through these DIAS platforms. It seems that there will be more than one platform, apparently three or four, but since the procurement is not yet concluded by the colleagues in DG Grow, I cannot give more details on this. But the idea is that the infrastructures will aggregate demand, will procure the services from the DIAS platforms. They will be integrated in the EOSC Hub, and they will be made available to the users through the EOSC Hub catalog of services. Services will have to be integrated in the EOSC via procurement. So the service providers should not be part of the consortium. Services will be procured through procurement contract and paid via procurement contract. The infrastructures should play an important role in the sense that we expect that they will be the aggregators of demand for these commercial services. And of course, the services should complement the existing offering in the EOSC catalog of services, which will be made available in the EOSC Hub. We would also like to focus on commercial services that are compliant with any available standards and guidelines for the management of the EOSC services, which will be made available by the EOSC Hub. But here we are aware that flexibility should be ensured since the call will open on 5th of December, and it is quite unlikely that there will be any standards made available during the period in which the call will be open. What is a little bit different maybe for this action compared to other standard area actions is that at proposal stage we would like to see an outline of the methods for gathering specifications, proposed criteria for selection of the most relevant commercial services, proposed indicators for continuous monitoring of the quality of the service and criteria for ensuring broad usage of the services, and a clear description of how the interoperability and the use of open standards will be taken into account during the project execution. But the actual work, the refinements of the methods for gathering specifications, the proposed criteria will have to be defined during the implementation of the action. So there are some requirements to be met at proposal stage, and then there is the actual work on aggregating demand, defining criteria, access conditions, and so on during the execution of the grant. The impact we would like to achieve with the action would be to set up a value-added procurement mechanism for the EOSC, also to enable the creation of new market opportunities and new solutions, and at the same time lower access barriers for scientific community to commercial services, in particular DIAS, which will be a new category of services, and probably it will be more difficult for individual researchers to go into procurement and buy through their own institutions these services. The call will open, said on 5th of December now, next week, and will end, the deadline for the call will be 22nd of March next year. The indicative budget is 12 million, and as said, we expect a balanced repartition of the amount between the two categories of services, commodity type commercial services and DIAS commercial services. Moving on to InfraEOSC 02-2019, this is a topic on prototyping new innovative services. Probably this will be more familiar for you since we had this type of calls in our past work programs. Infra 22, Infra 21. In the past, we have taken a slightly different approach. We had a call on platform-driven innovation, another one on user-driven innovation. This time is a common call on prototyping new innovative services. And here the idea is to develop new services which will be fit for purpose, which will meet the evolving needs of the scientific community in view of future integration in the EOSC. The indicative budget for the action is 28.5 million, and the suggested contribution per proposal 5 to 6 million. Regarding the scope of the action, the actions should target gaps in the saving offering of the EOSC. They should be leveraged to serve more than one community, to foster interdisciplinary research, and this is a much stronger requirement that, than what we had so far. We would like this approach is tested during the duration of the action, so that at the end of the project, the service can be used by a number of scientific communities. The services should be based on systems and technologies that have already reached TRL 6 before the start of the project and will be brought to at least TRL 8 by the end of the project. This requirement was included also in our previous calls, so there is no change. We start at TRL 6 with the aim of reaching TRL 8 by the end of the project. The proposals should demonstrate how the resulting services complement, enrich, and can be potentially integrated in the EOSC hub, and they should also take into account any accessibility requirements set under the projects funded under the Infra 12 2017, EOSC hub, and Open Air Advanced, but mostly EOSC hub, since that project is supposed to integrate most part of the services. And here, under this topic, we encourage participation of newcomers, in particular SMEs, innovative companies, to help building new services, new innovative services, which will really bring additional value to the existing catalog offer of the EOSC, and can improve the experience for the users of the EOSC. The impact we would like to achieve with the action is to integrate co-design into research and development of new services. Also, to support the objectives of open science by improving access to content and resources and facilitating interdisciplinary collaborations, and foster the innovation potential by opening up the EOSC ecosystem to infrastructures, service providers, to new innovative actors. This is all for the topics under the responsibility of DGCNECT. As said, InfraEOSC 03 is a topic that will be developed at a later stage, since it is a 2020 topic. The title is already announced. It will be another integration and consolidation call of infrastructures, but also trying to bring together all the elements that we will pilot in the work program 18-19, like the procurement mechanism, and also some new services which resulted from our past calls on innovative services. If you have any questions on these two topics. Thank you very much.
Ah, yes, there is a question.
Yeah. So if we are talking about InfraEOSC 02, well, there is in the general annexes to the work program, there is an annex which defines what the TRL means. We, with our actions, aim at starting TRL 6, and we aim at targeting gaps in the service offering of the EOSC. I cannot give you examples of new innovative services, but it's precisely where we see an opening for the new companies to think about what could bring added value to researchers, what is missing in the service offering, and of course this will evolve over time. We will see the first version of the catalog of services is put together by Infra Central. It will be made available beginning of next year, and all interested companies and infrastructures in this call are invited to have a look at this catalog of services and come with fresh ideas on new services that can be integrated at a later stage in the catalog of services. Welcome.
Is there any other question? Well,
Thank you very much.
If there is no more question, I would like to thank Gina for her presentation and invite my colleague Leonardo Flores to come to the stand and present to you the last call of our work program, the call on European data infrastructures. So be ready. He will tell us everything about support to PRACE and Centers of Excellence on HPC, among other things.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Leonardo Flores. I work in the HPC and Quantum Technologies Unit, and we're in charge of the HPC strategy, among other things. So the objective of the call in the European Data Infrastructure on the EDI is to support the pan-European high-performance computing infrastructure and service through PRACE. They support the Centers of Excellence on HPC, promoting the use of exascale computing capabilities and supporting the governance of the EDI in 2018 and 19. For 2020, there's another objective, but I will not elaborate on that. So, most of you may know PRACE. It has been running for already 5 incarnations. This may be the last one for Horizon 2020. And the goals of this particular PRACE is to support the new agreement that member states signed in 2017 to last till the end of Horizon 2020. So just to remind you, the challenges of the PRACE organization, the PRACE agreement is to support a world-class pan-European HPC infrastructure, to provide the state-of-the-art services by users independently of where they are, and pooling, integrating, and rationalizing our resources at the EU level. So we have a budget of 24 million for the last 3 years of the program. And this is basically, these objectives have not changed. I'm not going to go through them because PRACE is just one proposal that we will receive from them. The only novelty here is the second bullet is to support software implementation, helping Tier 0 users and communities in adapting and adopting novel software solutions, because the architectures are changing, are evolving towards exascale computing. So there will be a special teams that will help the national supercomputing centers with their applications from users to upgrade them to the new architectures that are being installed in the Tier 0 and the 6 systems that we have in Tier 0 now. So this is the only novelty. The rest of the objectives are the same as the previous calls. So this is the expected impact. Of course, this has not changed, but we want better services for our users in HPC, more cycles available for the research and industry, more, let's say, new communities coming to the Tier 0 layer of the HPC pyramid, and more investment in HPC infrastructures in Europe, because it's important that we ensure that they will have this pan-European infrastructure is sustainable. We have a better coordination between the suppliers of technology and the users and the supercomputer centers that will buy eventually this technology, and also to improve the ecosystem. We have better suppliers, we have better procurement, joint procurements in place, so this will dynamize a bit the HPC ecosystem in Europe. Okay, so this is praise. Second objective in this EDI call is the Centers of Excellence. This is a follow-up call. We had a first call in 2015 in which we established 9 Centers of Excellence. This is a follow-up call in which we stress the importance of having these Centers of Excellence on HPC computing applications towards exascale. So these communities, they have to group up together, come up together, and get their applications ready to the new generation of computing, which is exascale. We want these user-driven Centers of Excellence to be committed also to the co-design, because it's very important that the new technologies take into account the needs of these communities, of the research communities. And we have identified areas that do not match exactly what we have, because we had a review of what we had as Centers of Excellence, and we have identified the areas in which the proposal have to submit. They have to choose engineering, environment, biomolecular, biomedical materials, energy, big data performance, and other domains. It is open. I mean, we have a set for predetermined Centers of Excellence, plus other domains open, that new ideas that could be taken also on board, and at least one in each area will be supported. And also, I would like to say only one. That's what the ideal. It doesn't make sense to have 2 Centers of Excellence in Europe in the same area. That has to be. This is the message we have been sending to the communities. It doesn't make sense. They have to come together. They have the codes, and the objective is that we keep the excellence in Europe. So it doesn't matter if you belong to other small groups. You just come together, present a good proposal in your area. So this is the message that has to be sent. So we have an estimated budget of 72 million, and the proposal we expect between 6 and 8 million. We have also a support action with 2 million that will address the fragmentation of activities of the Centers of Excellence, because each Center of Excellence, I will explain this later, of course, it's community-driven, but there are things that can be done in common, and I'll explain that. Now, this is what they have to address. So we, as I said, the emphasis is in scalability and optimization towards exascale. So there are many communities that are interested in HPC, but they don't want to go to exascale because they say we're happy with what we have. Then they have to go to other parts of the program. Exascale is coming in the next 3 years, and this is where the new technologies will define the future competitiveness for the next 10 years. So we cannot afford that the excellence that we have currently with our application codes in HPC are lost because they cannot adapt. They cannot scale to 1 million, or, I mean, the last Chinese, the number 1 has, I don't know, 8 million cores, something like that, and there's another machine I think in Japan, is around 19 million cores. So these codes have to scale, If they don't scale, they will not be, useful in this new technology. So we also cover, apart from exascale, we also say, yes, we can cover also different usage models for people that do not need exascale yet, but exascale first, and also you can cover also some other, like high throughput computing, high performance data analytics, etc. As I said, it's very important to be committed to the co-design approach, so they have to collaborate with technologists to ensure that their requirements are included in the technology. They will have to take on training and capacity building activities in collaboration with PRAISE, because PRAISE has a tremendous effort in training, but it's mostly, or horizontal, and centers of excellence are vertical. So they have to take their share in training our computational scientists. So they have to take care of the data management, of course, and long-term data stewardships towards exascale, widening access to codes. So they just have to make sure that these codes are useful for industry and usable by industry. This is another task. They have to show us that their model is sustainable. I mean, that these centers of excellence are virtual, but they have to also think about the sustainability with the services and how they're going to be supported, these communities. And addressing the fragmentation of HPC applications, so we want them to collaborate with the CSA, with the support action that I will go into that now. And they have to define key performance indicators about what is the final result, what is the difference they make at the end of the day. So the impact is that to keep European leadership in exascale and extreme scale-oriented codes, better access to computing application expertise, not only for the scientific community, but for industry, in particular SMEs. As I said, improved competitiveness for companies and SMEs, federating capabilities, and as I said, we want one proposal, ideally one proposal per area, because that will be ideal, because that's the way to federate, and a much larger number of computational scientists, and in particular we make the emphasis on young people and female researchers. So on the coordination, as I said, centers of excellence may also do things their way, but this support action will try and foster how to better widen the use of these codes across the EU. So it's not a problem of a single area. We need to widen the use of these codes. So they will also try to formulate a single, let's say, a single entry point for anyone that wants to get trained from industry or for academia. I want to get trained, or I want to get expertise in HPC. There will be a way, they will find ways to organize this. Coordination the services of different centers of excellence, because sometimes you don't know where to go. To act as a clearinghouse for training and consultancy, so there's only a single entry point for people interested in HPC, and trying to avoid the overlaps and filling the gaps that can be in between the centers of excellence and praise. And as I say, promote outreach to industry and SMEs. So they will go and try to get more people in industrial sectors coming to the centers of excellence that by nature they tend to be academic and they tend to be very good on outreach in academia, in scientific, but not in industry. So we have the impact, so we want to have, as I say, better consultancy and services provided, including training to the outside world, and this support action will make it, let's say, more attractive, or it would put it in a way that people will tend to go more to centers of excellence. They will increase the visibility and outreach of centers of excellence, promote the use of HPC by identifying more industrial and SMEs that will be interested in using these techniques, and better coordination of the training, in particular in coordination with praise. Okay, so then we have a small action that was coming from the communication, in which the communication said, okay, we have this European data infrastructure that we want to build in the next few years, but we need some governance, because there are many actors. There's the European Commission, there are member states. So we are supporting a small action of a bit less than 1 million to promote this governance by involving the different stakeholders that will be participating how to deal with this governance. So this establishes a communication platform linking with the activities in the field, the relevant activities in the field, organize outreach events, and involve the users, implementers, and funders. So the people who put the money, the ones who are going to implement it, and the ones who will use this infrastructure. Okay, so the impact that we expect is a better governance, to have ideas on how to handle this and how to integrate these different layers of the funders, the implementers, and the users, and to create this European data infrastructure. Okay, so we expect also to have one, to select one. We don't. And I think that's it, but I would like to have this, there's one action that is not in this presentation, I think it was in Philippe's presentation. If I can get it, it's about the SMEs. It's about infra innov and SMEs. This complements. Yeah. So the idea is here we wanted to have a specific action for SMEs, and maybe you know Fortissimo. Fortissimo is an activity of that it was funded under I4MS program, in which they have created a market for HPC services. So SMEs can go there and say, okay, I'm interested in using SMEs, using HPC advanced services. I want some support. And then this Fortissimo creates the link between the ones who want resources and the ones who have needs. So we want to extend this idea to have this support to SMEs to areas that are not covered by Fortissimo. So we explain in the call that, okay, it's to stimulate SMEs, so we'll give you money. 80%, in fact, of the money will be dedicated to support SMEs in form of grants. It will be a cascading grant here. And I don't know if there's, oops, no. Okay, and the idea is to have around 8 million here and cover the areas that are not covered by Fortissimo and that are in, let's say, in priority covered by the centers of excellence. So we complement our activities in centers of excellence with this action. Why? Because we say, if we encourage SMEs in the areas covered by the centers of excellence to use more HPC services, then the centers of excellence may intervene there and say, okay, you can use these codes. I can give you some consultancy, I can give you. So we want to bridge a little bit the gap between the knowledge, the scientific knowledge that we have in HPC applications with the needs of SMEs in those areas. So that it's coming a bit later than the centers of excellence. So the centers of excellence will be called for, the deadline I think is in May 2018. And this action, the deadline is in January 19. So it will come later, so then it will be much better. The proposal will be then explaining which areas it will cover. And except manufacturing, which is covered by Fortissimo. So it complements Fortissimo and the centers of excellence. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you very much, Leonardo, for this presentation, and also the presentation on the last topic that I had missed on purpose because I wanted to present it. Is there any question? Yes.
I can repeat the question, no problem. Yeah, okay, so in HPC, the question is how the international cooperation will be covered in HPC. So in the topics that we have is PRAISE. So PRAISE, it has built-in international cooperation, but it's an international cooperation that is with their peers in Japan or in the States, which is the ones that are offering cycles to the communities. So there is not much room for a spontaneous international cooperation because that's already in a very, very concrete frame. So they will exchange cycles, so your people from the States can use European cycles and people from Europe can use Japanese or US cycles. But that is built in place in their system. On the centers of excellence, we tell them that they have to cover international cooperation. Okay, so the idea here is that partners, for instance, I have received calls from universities and research centers from South America in astronomics or in biotechnology and say, we're interested. So the thing is, say, go to the centers current centers of excellence, or if you know somebody who is preparing a center of excellence, and you can participate in the proposal. Because it's of course, very good. It's very good that the centers of excellence also, they can take, for instance, applications that we don't have here in Europe, like in the observatories or something like that, or the marine research that they have in some parts of the world. They can have this application to get better codes in Europe. So This is one way of international cooperation, but it has to be inside the centers of excellence. And the other is, I don't think we have no SMEs. No, we don't have anything particular on international cooperation. No, there's no priority. International cooperation is international cooperation. What we want is European excellence on HPC. If they can contribute to European excellence on HPC, because they provide use cases, because they, fantastic, they will be positively evaluated. Huh? So it's built in the proposal. Huh? Okay, no more questions? Okay, thank you.
Yes, so no more questions. Thank you again, Leonardo, for your presentation. I realize that we are running a little bit late, but you will still have to bear with us for a little longer because we have another and one last presentation to make under this session, which will be made by my colleague Lorenza Saracco. The presentation has an intriguing title. It's Modalities for Call Application, but my understanding is that it's all about access and unit cost, which is an issue which some of you have experienced when preparing proposals. The feedback we get is that it's not that simple to use the unit cost that we develop for access to research infrastructures. You have to bear in mind that this is an improvement what we are proposing to you in Horizon 2020 with respect to what we had in the previous framework program. So there's, in a sense that there is flexibility, much more flexibility now than what you had in FP7. But we are also listening to you, and it goes without saying that we will try to improve the way we implement this scheme in the future, because it's clear that there is room for improvement. Having said that, after the presentation that Lorenza will make, everything will become very clear to you.
Good morning, I'm Lorenza Saracco from the Research Infrastructure Unit. Okay, as Philippe was saying, the presentation will be mainly focused on the more specific feature of our program, that is the access. As a general issue, I just want to remind you the definition of research infrastructure, because remember, it's important that in your proposal, research infrastructure are at the core. And what they are, research infrastructure, are facilities, resources, and services that are used by the scientific community for conducting research and innovation in their field. They have really a mission, service mission, and they are usually and they are always open to external users, not just to their own staff. So it's important that to make the difference between a research infrastructure and just a research lab that works with collaboration with other people, but really does not provide a service. Then the access provision that is specific for our program is supported under the 2018-2019 topics, under the integrating activities, both advanced community and starting community in 2020. And here, for integrating activities, access is a mandatory component. So it has integrating activities has to provide access. It can be virtual, transnational, or both, but there should be access. And this access should be implemented in an integrated and coordinated way to improve the overall service available at European level to research community. Then access is also possible, transnational access under the S3 and other world-class research infrastructure. And then we have also under the specific grant agreement of the GIANT, the virtual access. So I don't know if you have participated under FP7 to our program, but there have been some novelties, and I speak because now there will be some of the communities that will participate for the first time to an H2020 grant. Now we speak about virtual access instead of service activities like it was in FP7. There is a specific provision for access in the Article 16 of the Model Grant Agreement instead of the and a unit cost decision instead in a specific Annex 3 to the grant agreement. The cost of access provided under the grant, this is important, is no more limited to 20% of the total access cost of an installation, and this has been mainly done not to underline that now a research infrastructure can fully be dependent from EC funding, but just to avoid to to calculate the full cost of providing access for the research infrastructure when you use different type of cost reporting system. Then the unit cost is no more defined as estimated at the beginning of the grant and then recalculated at the end of the grant, but is calculated at the beginning of the grant on the basis of historical data if you have. If you don't have historical data, then you have to go to the actual data methodology that I will explain later. There are now a little bit more clarity on what can be considered, what can be included in the access cost. In particular, there are explicit list of cost, of category of costs under the decision, and also mentioned in the annotated model grant agreement that I really invite you to read for the relevant parts. There is also a novelty for the support to third country users. Now we can support up to 20% of fully third country user team. It was not the case under FP7 where someone from a third country could participate, but only if included in a user team that where the majority was from member state or associated states. So we are more open to third country. And also there is an exemption for SMEs from the requirement to disseminate the results generated under the transnational access. So what is transnational access, for who doesn't know, is a free of access provision of access to research infrastructure to selected users or research team usually working in a country other than the country where the research infrastructure is located. It can be in person, so the user will visit the infrastructure, or also remote scientific service that where the visit is not needed. For example, the performance of a batch of a sample analysis, some batch calculation, some even, for example, the provision of access to a supercomputer can be considered a remote scientific service. It's important that the difference between virtual and remote, because remote is always related to resources that are limited, for example, high-performance computing cycles, or they require some months effort, therefore, again, there is a limitation, while the virtual access, for example, when there is a resources free on internet, data, or this kind of things that can be released. Some kind of unlimited, given by the capacity of the network. Another important thing that people make usually mistakes is that the training is not access. When you give a training to a person, it's not access. So don't come out with the transnational access that are just training courses. But the ad hoc training can be a part of access provided to the user visiting the infrastructure. For example, if he needs 1 day of instruction on how to use the infrastructure, this is, can be included. It can be also charged to the grant in the access cost. While if you, for example, want to make a general training course on how to use a research infrastructure for a set of potential users, this can be supported under the networking activities. If you remember when Philippe presented a little bit the integrating activities, say that they have 3 main components, and there are 3 mandatory components that are the networking activities, the joint research activities to improve the services and infrastructure, and the access provision. It is also a mandatory component. So general training for potential user of the infrastructure. So again, it's not training in the field, for example, but training on how to use the infrastructure can be supported under the networking activities. Virtual access, as I was saying, are indeed access free of charge access to widely used resources needed for research that are openly and freely available through communication network. We also underline the widely used because we would not like to support just every resource you have on your computer. There are really, you have to show a little bit that there are really things that are used, that needed, and this is why they require an additional support from the Commission. Here, need to select user because indeed the resource is open on internet, so everyone can have access. So there is also no need to a selection panel. There is no need to identify users. However, you could identify if, for example, you need this for a specific requirement like registration, authentication, authorization, or access to sensitive data. So you can in case do it. There is no need for the user to visit the infrastructure. Clearly, it's given through internet. And there is no need to define a unit of access, no specific, in any case, you will not have specific access costs that are attributable to a given user. Here, the training course, again, you can be done again, how to use the infrastructure, not in the field, can be supported under the networking activities. Under definition, we speak of a research infrastructure, but we speak also of installation. What is an installation? It's a part of a service of a research infrastructure that could be used independently from the rest. A research infrastructure consists of one or more installation. When the installation provides transnational access, it will have different unit of access. For example, you can have even some infrastructure that give both virtual through internet open access to specific resources, and then they give a more articulated access to the same set, but together with computation and specific support to user, and that in that case is transnational. The access provider is one of the beneficiaries of an integrating activity or one of the grant that provide access under the grant to one or more research infrastructure installation. Usually an installation is always linked to a single beneficiary, while an infrastructure can also be shared between different beneficiaries. For transnational access only, we speak of user group, that is a research team of one or more researcher led by a user group leader to whom access to the installation is given under the grant. And the selected user are the researcher within a user group. Be careful, because a user group can also be composed by only one person, and there are, for example, research infrastructure that give always access to individual research. The obligation of an access provider is to, and again, this has to be done possibly integrated under the grant, to publicize widely the access offered under the grant agreement and the modality to apply, to take into account the gender dimension, so to not discourage diversity, to set up an independent selection panel to select the user to be supported, to maintain and provide to the European Commission appropriate documentation to support and justify the amount of access reported. So this is important. You have to start since the beginning to collect all the information on user, because when audit comes, they want to see everything, even if sometimes we don't ask everything. Okay, and then a unit of access must be defined for each installation, and it must be identified and clearly defined. Be careful, because when you say a day, you have also to define what is a day, or an hour. What is an hour? It's a day. Every day can be working. For example, working day means from Monday to Friday, or a day of work. And it's 8 hours. I mean, what include this day? It's just a day at the infrastructure, or please be specific, because also when you define well what is the unit of access, it will be then very easy to calculate the access. Because if you say what this unit of access include, then it will be very easy to charge, to find the cost of this unit of access. The eligibility condition for the user group. Okay, first of all, a user group must present a request of access. That usually is a short research project, and say, I want to come on your infrastructure to do this and this and this. So again, an integrating activities provide access to external users. The users are not part of the integrating activities, but they request access. And the integrating activities has to launch call for users. The user has to apply to this call, presenting what they want to do, a research project in which they explain what they want to do on the infrastructure and in which context this experiment is framed. And then this research project will be evaluated by a selection panel. So anyway, there are also conditions of eligibility for a group. Indeed, a group eligible for transnational access is eligible when the user group leader and the majority of users work in a country different from where the installation is located. So we don't want to give access under one of our grants, for example, to a French infrastructure, because this can be done very well at the national level, and we work on subsidiarity. Instead, we want to open research infrastructure, national research infrastructure, to European researchers. This is why it's important that the majority of user comes from a different country. This does not apply when the access provider is an international organization. Clearly, if you want to go to the MBL, it should not be considered German. Or when there is an ERIC, again, it's multinational, and so in this case, this rule does not apply. Also in case of remote access to a set of installation offering the same type of services and located in a different country. This is a specific case. We were saying this is the mice case, when you have a mouse repository around, that you don't need really to get the one from another country if it's available in your country. But again, now the mouse, the distributed mouse repository, it's an ERIC, so there is no problem. It's an S3 project. You can also define some further rules to define to give access. For example, you could say that a researcher from third country cannot go in a third country research infrastructure, because there is at that point no specific EU interest in this. So this kind of things. A user group should disseminate the results, so should be able to publish then the results of their experiment, unless they work from me. This was the exception I mentioned before. And access for user group with the majority of users working in third countries limited to 20% of the total amount of units of access provided under the grant. So access cost for transnational access, this is also a difficult part, is the access, how to charge these things in the grant. You have to charge access costs that can be, the access costs normally cover the running cost of an installation and all the cost that is specific to the support of the user, the logistical, technological, scientific support, ad hoc training, preparatory and closing activities. For example, if you go to a shaking table, the infrastructure will have to prepare your structure before and dismount later, and this also can be charged to the grant. And exclude all contribution to capital investment. This is different, for example, from this large research infrastructure methodology that is not applicable under our program, because indeed we exclude the capital investment as access to research infrastructure is the main scope. We exclude the support to capital investment. So, for example, the depreciation is not an eligible cost. And then also the travel and subsistence cost of user to the research infrastructure, they should not be charged under access costs, but they can be charged to the grant, but they are not considered really access costs. The novelty under Horizon 2020 is that now we have 3 ways to report transnational access costs, using a unit cost calculated on the basis of historical access costs, as was mentioned before, charging only the eligible cost actually and solely incurred for providing access to the group, to the selected user group. So you have really to monitor, to register all the costs that are incurred in relation to the supported user. It can be also a combination of the two. For example, if you have a network, but we will make an example later. Let's go. So the unit cost for transactional access, as I said, is based on historical data of last 2 closed financial year, and you should make an average annual total cost to the installation divided the annual total quantity of access to the installation annually provided. That means that in the previous 2 years you should have registered how many units of access you have provided to the user, and also how much you have were the cost to provide all this access. So this is important. If you don't have this data, you could start with actual cost, create this registration, this record of information, and then, for example, after 2 years, make an amendment and move to unit cost. Unit cost is usually a little bit more convenient, if you want, because it can allow you to charge also the running costs that are usually not easily associable to a specific user. Maintenance, you can say what is the share of maintenance that is related to a certain user. Electricity, difficult. You could have a counter, yes. If you have a counter, yes. But if you don't have a specific counter that measures how much electricity you are giving for a specific user, it's very difficult to charge. So again, there are pros and cons. On the other side, to calculate a unit cost, it's more difficult. So again, you have to evaluate what is better for your case. But once, for example, you have calculated unit cost, then the charge of the access cost to the grant is very easy because you have just to multiply the number of unit of access provided under the grant for the unit cost. So more difficult to before, you need a lot of data, but then it's easier to be reported. This is the list that I was mentioning. I will not go through, but these slides will be distributed so you will know what can be included in the access cost, and the indirect costs are 25% like in all Horizon 2020. For example, just to give you an example, if you have an infrastructure that provides 6,100 hours of access in year and in the two previous year and in the previous year and 5,900 hours in the years n-2, and then you have a total access cost of 3,200,000 euro in 12,800,000 euros in 800,000 euros in the previous 2 years. Then you have the way to calculate this average cost of this is, and then you arrive to a unit cost of 500 euro per day, for example. You can charge this one, or, for example, if there are limitations to stay in the budget, you can even decide to charge a little bit less. And you will see that for this calculation, there are some specific Excel forms that are available on the website. And there is also a further line in which you could decrease the amount, not increase. Don't come with an higher unit cost and then what you calculate. The actual cost, instead, as I said, you make again the calculation in this form, but then when you report, you will report in the various cost categories, because unit costs have a specific column in the financial form, while in this actual cost will be reported in the various personnel, in the personnel, subcontract, in the subcontract, and other costs, financial. Okay. Let's try to be a little bit faster. This is the combination. Combination is used, as I said, when there is a variation, a very strong variation of the unit of the cost of a unit of access. For example, in an ocean observation network, the cost to mount and dismount a specific sensor in an observation point station needed for a user work can vary according to the type of sensor to the location of the station. Therefore, this cost could be reimbursed as actual cost because they can vary, they can even not be necessary, while the running cost of the observatory network can be charged as unit cost. Again, we pass now the virtual access. Virtual access again has to publicize the access, set an external board not to assess, to evaluate the user, but to periodically assess the service offered. Commission want to be reassured that the services are really top level, really at the European level, and are widely used. Again, if you have a small database that you keep in your lab, we are not really interested to support. And provide to assist that it's on the access offered, so you have to collect through analytics, instrument, quantity, geographic distribution of user, and possibly, when it's possible, when your research infrastructure is acknowledged, also some information on publication and parent coming. Cost, their actual cost. Here they include all the costs to provide access and exclude the capital investment again. The actual means incurred under the grant, but here things that I want to underline. So here you have a list of categories of costs that can be charged, but I want to underline, really be careful that these costs are not specifically supported by other funding source, EC funding source or other funding source, because otherwise they have to be declared as a receipt. So be careful because, for example, if you have the electricity that is paid specifically by an organization, by another external organization to support the running of your infrastructure, you should not charge this one. But for example, you could instead charge the full cost of the help desk, so you know that is a things that the Commission will support, or or other specific part that are not clearly identified in the funding provided by your funders. This is the table that you would be requested to fill in the proposal with all the installation and the type of access and the cost and estimated the number of users. Very detailed, but you first of all are advanced community, so for them it will be easier. For starting community, it's indeed a challenge. Those are the Excel form that I was mentioning to calculate the access cost and virtual and transnational. This is the one for transnational that has two parts, unit cost and actual cost. When you use unit cost, you use only the first part. When you charge a cost as actual cost, only the second. And when you charge a cost as combination, you fill both. This is the one for virtual access, it's only actual. And again, here you will find some instruction on how to fill it. And that's all.
Thank you very much, Lorenza, for this very comprehensive presentation. We have time for one or two questions now. If there are more questions, we can take them later after the coffee break. In the parallel sessions. Yes, there is a question.
Can you comment a little bit on how you define virtual access versus remote access?
Yes. Okay. As I was saying, virtual access is something that is freely available on internet, so usually data or software that you can download, some things, resources that is there that can be used by many users in parallel, so there is not really kind of limitation on the number of user cases given from the capacity of the server, but really there is not a physical limitation in the sense that you have only tot cycle or tot human person available. Therefore, it's related really to and also to the fact that there are not costs that are directly attributable to the specific user. Again, if user X uses your data and another one Y uses your data, you cannot say how much it costs to give X and Y. While, for example, if a supercomputer is used by X and Y, you know exactly how many CPU time you gave to X and how many CPU time you gave to Y. And you know that the CPU time that you have available, it's limited. It's, for example, you want to put under the grant the provision of 3 million unit of access, then you know that you have that limitation. So it's, again, or when you ask a mouse, you know that there is a cost in preparing the mouse, and this is limited because it depends from the people that work to prepare the things. So again, it's something that is limited, and even if it's remote, it has a cost, and then the user is clearly identifiable.
Thank you very much. I see that there are other questions, but as I said, we are running a little bit late. You will have the opportunity to ask the questions in the afternoon. There are sessions where we will have the possibility to discuss that further. I would like to thank you very much for your participation for this session. I would like to thank the speakers for their presentations. We have now a coffee break, which will last 15 minutes. I will ask you to come back at 12 o'clock sharp in the room for the second session, which will be a roundtable session. Thank you very much for your attention.
Back for the roundtable session. For the roundtable, you have a project testimony, Julie Donnelly for the project Accents, Guy van Gis from the project Ingrid, and Christian Ronaldo for the project AUFT-ICR-MS. Okay, so they will explain you what's their best practice, the main points. And that roundtable will be moderated by José Antao from the RICH Network NCP, okay? So I give you the floor. So, just to this one, probably? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Gail, and thanks to our guests here today. We are going to slightly change the order of the presentations here, so we're going to go from the more experienced to the less experienced, or the more integrated to the less integrated so far. The three infrastructure projects we have here are Ingrid, EUFT, ICR, MS, and Ascent, as Gael has already mentioned. So Ingrid is an advanced community. It has already received support. It's the second project going on. Ascent is a starting community, but it's been supported in the first call in Horizon 2020, so it's now full steam moving. And EU FTICRMS has just been approved, so they can probably give us some input on the process and the new implementations, namely the two-stage process, and how the process is going for them with the grant agreement and all. So without further ado, I'm going to invite here. Okay, Guy van Gis from Q11 for telling us a few words on Ingrid.
Thank you for the invitation. Yeah, just very quickly, I will explain what we are. And there may be some, yeah, it's always, I think, difficult to give guidance to other people, because everybody has his thing, I think, his own way of doing things, but nevertheless, I will maybe stress some elements. Okay, what we are is, we are in the Integrating Research Infrastructures program, and we are, like I said, we are now on the second time in an advanced community, so we are not directed to an open call, but directed to a topical part of the infrastructure program. So, of course, infrastructure is about facilitating top-level research, and that's what we do, of course. We do it for social science research, which is comparative, policy-related, related to the European Inclusive Growth Strategy of EU 2020, which means, of course, we focus mainly to researchers which are doing comparative research on poverty living conditions and work condition vulnerability. The facilities are linked to the three elements of I think every type of good research. It's about comparative databases. Certainly European research needs comparative databases. It's about high-tech analytical tools, and it's about better reporting. And you find all the different types of infrastructure that we have in our infrastructure. For the moment, 19 partners. Okay, that's basically our infrastructure. You can, of course, read on the websites, etc. I've also have some flyers outside there, more about this if you are interested in it. But here I think it's more the idea to to see about applying for a call, being successful in a call. And I think, again, basically what you always have to do, I think, is to read the call very carefully and to respond to everything that they ask. That's the main thing that you have to do. And of course, in these calls, there are always, I think, new things. And in our call, and I think it's still the case in the current call, of course, you have to prove very strongly management efficiency, innovation capacity, international dimension. There are three very important elements. That's what, for example, we did for international dimension. We have now collaborations with international organizations, the OECD and ILO, which are in our field very important international organizations. They are third parties in our infrastructure. In relation to innovation capacity, so I think that's very important. If you can maybe do it after, so when you've written the proposal, that you always check how many words you use and what kind of words you use. Of course, I think it's not important that you use in this kind of call the word research a lot. Because in the end, you don't do research. You only support research. So the words like support, facilitate, and then also in this now, it's very important, the word innovation. And of course, in social sciences, we make then the link with policy innovation. So in our proposal, you find everywhere the term policy innovation, and try to explain how we can contribute to policy innovation. I think that's very important in the current program. I will not, when it's related to management efficiency, it means, for instance, that we have these kind of things like a data management plan, a dissemination plan. We have a lot of plans, a lot of plans in our proposal. And I think it's the thing you have to do. You have to show your plans that you're in your management, that you have. Besides, of course, you need a kind of decision making structure in your with an executive board, an advisory board. We have a general board in our infrastructure, but the management efficiency, I think you show to a certain extent with plans. I think that's maybe the most important things. Of course, infrastructure is in the part of research excellence. I think in the end, it is very strongly, in the end, Horizon 2020 is an innovation and technology program. It's not only a science program, it's an innovation and technology program. That's, I think, very important. So you have to get familiar with the wording of an innovation technology program. Of course, maybe people are coming from engineering, etc. It's maybe more easy, but certainly for people coming from social science, you need all the time talk in technology terms. Technology transfer, knowledge brokering, this kind of wording you use a lot in your proposals. But that's again a general remark. I think if you apply for Horizon 2020 programs, is of course a lot of people focus on what they're going to do. And try to write a very good proposal on what they're going to do. But in the end, that's not so important. What you have to write very good is why you want to do it and the impact it will have. These are two very important elements, because what everybody can write, what everybody can explain very good, because we are scientists, we are very aware of what we are doing. But here, of course, the clue is that you write very strong and good things about why you want to do it. And of course, it means we link it to the EU 2020 strategy, to a European major policy strategy. And secondly, our impact, how you link it to innovation in our field, to policy innovation. And then the last thing, what I always try to do is, in my proposal, I have 5 schemes that summarize the whole proposal. So somebody who sees these 5 slides knows what is the proposal about, these 5 schemes. I already showed 2 of them. And these are the third one is this one. We focus on 3 elements: integrated data, tools for policy elevation, and indicator building. And we have 3 enablers in our program, in our project. Of course, the typical ones for infrastructure. We have 2 pillars in our program: poverty living conditions, work conditions, and vulnerability. And the focus areas come back in the horizontal scheme. And this is the whole project in work packages and in work packages. Where you see, of course, and that's something to stress, and then I finish. We have, of course, research, and we have the transnational access, but we have this link to innovation. We have 2. We have a specific program in our infrastructure proposal. We have strategic innovation networking with innovation network activities, and strategic advancement, futuring activities on the research infrastructure, which is, I think, key in an infrastructure proposal, certainly when you're an advanced community. That was all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. Very concise and to the point, I guess. I think that explains why you have been successful. So I would now invite Julie Donnelly from Tyndall National Institute to talk about ASCENT, so starting community for now.
Yes, starting community for now, exactly. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to present a tiny bit on the program, but more what we learned in the process of being a starting community. And just for background, we had also run a very similar program on a national level for 11 years, so we're really familiar with what it takes to be successful in an access program. We are a very small consortium. There's only 3 partners, and the 3 partners are the leading infrastructures that provide nanoelectronics fabrication facilities. So you will be familiar, I hope anyway, if you're in the nanoelectronics field, you will be familiar on the right with IMEC in Belgium, Leti in Grenoble in France on the left, and Tyndall in Cork in the centre. We aren't at the 14 nanometer scale for nanoelectronic device fabrication, but what we have is a flexible fab, so people can come if they're working on beyond CMOS or beyond 14 nanometer, which is the advanced nanoelectronics that we work in. So even though that you may be not specialists in this area, I think that the learnings that we have will go to any program that we've been involved in. It has been useful only having 3 partners because we're much more efficient, but you'll see when I talk about building the consortium, really what we're looking for the future for our advanced community is to broaden that and bring in other aspects. When we started, we were really thinking about who could fabricate these very advanced devices, and that was a limited pool within Europe, but now we're looking at diversifying the offer for the future. We have our website there as well if you want any more information on it. And very briefly, from the outset, we take the view of the user. What does the user need from us? We know what we have, just as you just said there. Exactly, we could talk forever on nanoelectronics, but we styled all our objectives towards the user. What do they need? They need simplified access to advanced technology and characterization, because the majority of our users are in facilities where they don't have these massive fabs for 14 nanometer CMOS devices, and we want them to be able to come and use the facilities easily. So we pitch from the user point of view. So we want to, of course, Europe has a unique advantage of having this massive infrastructure, and we want to leverage off that. We also want to develop a starting community. That's what we're talking about today. Accelerate the development of advanced models. That's really what we want the community to do, and we want them to do it at where the industry is at, not where the research is at, and we are the conduit to that. We want to enable the community to have test chips, something they can't make in their home institutes. We want them to come and use our facilities. And finally, everything that we do, we want to share. So we want to look at how do we make those outputs easily accessible to everybody. I won't spend too long on what we look like. This is the overall picture there, the facilities in the photographs there. But really, if I just wanted to pick one thing off this slide, is the access team in the middle. So how we offer simplified access is by having single point of contact through an access team. People may be familiar in this field. If you know somebody in these facilities, you might have a chance of being able to get some information or some access. But we take all that difficulty away, and the access team does all the discussion on which is the best facility, what do they need. So if you like, do the hand-holding at the outset. So I've skipped my other slides of more on how we work to get straight to maybe some points that I'd like to pass on for our learning experience. So identifying key partners in your domain obviously is important, but also looking for partners that maybe offer something different. For example, in our case, we would look to the future, bringing in the design and modeling components, more packaging and expertise in that discipline, in various disciplines. We would make sure that, or I would advise you, make sure that you know the partners that you're bringing in know what they're signing up to, that it's only a fraction of what they already offer. So they need to be very aware of that before they sign up, that you're not trying to be the only access into their own facilities. I think certainly being aware of the cost model, I'm glad that we had the detailed explanation earlier, because it is a different model maybe than you're already using. So you do need to know how to calculate the cost, and then that all those labs and fabs and various parts of your organization have the controls in place then to actually record the actual cost. in our case, we have these very large laboratory management systems, but how the cost we have to report for the EU project in this case is slightly different than we may for other reporting structures. So from the very outset, make sure that they know what's involved, and it's running costs only, so there's no profit involved. That might be an issue for some of your potential people. And make sure everybody has buy-in, not just from the people who you're talking to as you build your consortium, but from the people behind the scenes, because they are the ones that are going to do all the hand-holding. And we do a lot of almost consultancy with the users before they ever come as an actual user to try and figure out what they want. So that does take time and effort. And as we said at the beginning, look to the future, because from the outset, we want to be an advanced community. We see this is a long-term investment for Europe. Just on best practice, am I okay to go another minute? Maybe just one more minute. On best practice, make sure the program is user-focused. We have a membership model, so everyone we talk to, we get them to join as a member. That way we have a captive audience for all our publicity, and then they may make an inquiry and come as a user. So far we have 250 members across Europe. That translated into 100 inquiries, and so far we have 64 users. So you do need to build up your momentum in that way. Make sure your application process is quick and easy, but with a very strong quantitative marking system. You will have your external panel, but make sure it's quantitative. And promotion, I can't say enough. You would think it would be easy when you're offering something that's free, but it's not. You need to do and build in a huge amount of direct marketing, face-to-face engagement, using the clusters. And also, while we run an open call, you might consider having priority or timed calls, because that helps your promotion, because you always have a new date coming up.
Thank you very much. And just taking the opportunity that the slide is up, like I think it's something that has not been used enough, which is the interaction with the national contact points, which we are active in disseminating opportunities for access, and it's not always a channel that is open, that people are aware of. So I've had good experience with several infra projects, and I think it's something to be fostered. So finally, we have Christian Rolando from the EU FT-ICR-MS, which is just about to start.
Yeah. Well, on the way of signing the grant agreement, and we are just starting infra for starting community, and our EU project officer is Dr. Mina Koleva. First, I will explain you what is mass spectrometry. I am sure that you have all seen this mass spectrometer in the series, and this one is particularly good. It gives the answer to everything, and Abby loves it. And in reality, mass spectrometry is the most sensitive technique for quantifying unknown organic molecules, and it's an ubiquitous technique both for legal aspect and for research. And FT-ICR, in comparison of other mass spectrometer, the best other mass spectrometer as giving you peaks like this, and FT-ICR is exploding all the peaks, and it gives you the isotope of the isotope. We are a network. The cost of the instruments are between 1.5 and 3 million euros, but the instrument requires a very skilled team. And so we are a network of 10 academic centers, 2 SME, Brucker, which is the major worldwide FT-ICR-MS manufacturer, and the model is a model for all academic partners being equal. You have not a core and other participants. And we have, for the different work package and the specificity, as we have all the same machines, are the domain from the cultural heritage to medicine and structural biology, and we have a work package on open data. The two-step proposals and evaluation, the first one is quite easy, it's 20 pages. The second one, it's much more difficult to write. It's 100 pages plus the description of the partner, and the template is not well adapted for an infra call, and it tries some recursive writing. Read, if you can, read before starting to write a successful proposal. And you receive something like that, the evaluation at the end. Okay, FTICR providing superior analysis, the message is okay, all the message is okay. The note is okay, but you have also something which is not so good, like this, and something which is quite bad. 4/5 is quite bad, and the risk management was not okay. And my message is take more time on these two criterion, 2 and 3. Science is not the only important point. Okay, you need funding in the preparatory phase. You need at least 20, 30 kilo euros for setting for the consulting company. You need a consulting company for writing the project. You need to organize a meeting of the consortium during the preparatory phase, travels of the PI. So you need an investment at the beginning. Look to available documents. It's better to read before the consortium agreement, because there are points in the consortium agreement you should write in the same way in the document, and there are also rules, not mandatory rules, describing the access to the infrastructure. And contact, of course, your national contact point. And the message I got from Gaël De Croix and Jean-Pierre Camidan, and I got the message here, is that an infra is a starting point. You start here. At the second step, you are here. After the first stage, here, 1/3, here, we are here, and hopefully we will go here, and I don't know how much they were, but it's less. So from here, to here, there is 1/10 of success. And my last slide, it was the pre-kickoff meeting in Lisbon. Nice sun, everyone wants to go in Lisbon and not in Lille, Liège, or Brussels. You have all the PIs here, but the PIs are not the only important people. My message is you need a strong administrative staff. You have here the PI and the administrative staff, And I warmly thank Maud Perrier-Camby from the CNRS. We coordinated all the budget aspects, and the budget for the TNA are quite tricky. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much actually for finishing with a picture of the school where I was an undergrad student. And this building was not there yet when I got in 20 years ago, which makes me feel very old. Like the new students were not born then, which is it's interesting to contemplate. So if I just may make a couple of remarks, I think these were, in my opinion, as an NCP, it's a very interesting mix of different situations and different approaches also. I think there was a good set of advice that was talked about here. On the one hand, on how to frame, well, of course, from this last presentation, on how to actually go through an application, which is where you are now. And from Ingrid also on how to frame your project, how to sell it basically to the evaluators. And I think it was very, very interesting from everyone. I think that you focused on the fact that this is not about just research excellence, and that's an advice that we always give. And it's important to speak the lingo and to look for the relevant policies at European level and to focus on impact. And that, of course, is also focused by Ascent and the very strong focus on the client, so to say. But also we have some very different situations here in terms of consortia. We have a consortium with the 3 partners, right? And that is probably a dream situation for management, which is not the most usual case. And it's maybe not a bad thing if you are a starting community. But then you have other challenges when you have more and more diverse partners, I guess. So I'll just like to start with these few notes, and I'll first start by opening the floor for anyone who has questions about what you've heard, or if you have any other questions that you think these speakers can contribute to elucidate. Are we taking questions from the internet? No. Yes, Manfred, please. I will. Yeah, I'll stand back.
So I try. Very. Especially for the last speaker, I was really surprised about your remark that you need a consultancy agency and pay them a lot of money to do the project, because basically the project comes from you, from your institutions, from your partner organizations, and from my experience as NCP and from talks with evaluators, it's not about how polished the graphics look and about how good the English is, if it's understandable. The science and the idea behind the project are the main points. So why do you think that it's so necessary to have a consultancy before?
Because first, because it's very good to have people who are not in the projects and who are trained to read and to submit projects. They show you what is not so well written, and they complete very well the scientific and administrative stuff. I think it's very, very useful.
Yeah. Any other questions? No? So, well, I may ask a couple maybe. So, to Julie Donnelly, do you feel like if you were to expand into an advanced community, would you maintain a core of partners, just that core, or do you think it would be important even for more integration and for you to standardize procedures and all of that to include other partners that even if they don't offer the exact same service, that could benefit for integration also at European level?
Yes, certainly, and we've already started speaking to partners. The thing, though, that we have to do with that is expand the offer. So it can't just be 14 nanometer CMOS devices because there is nobody else, but what we're looking at now is that aspect of beyond CMOS and looking at more wider disciplines. So yes, for the advanced community we will be changing the we keep the core partners, expand, but that will mean changing fundamentally the offer as well.
But would there also be consideration, for instance, to fuse with other communities that are sort of on the same type of field in nanoelectronics and nanotechnologies in general?
Yes, and we have created very good contacts with clusters within that, so certainly we would, and we don't have any university partners in where we feel that they will add to the modelling side and the characterization side, so not just, we were really thinking technology providers, but there's a wider disciplines there, so yes, certainly we will expand.
Well, anytime someone wants to ask a question, just put your hand up, please. Yes, we have a question here. Yes. It's coming.
Hi, Tine Erland from Institute for Energy Technology in Norway. I was wondering, when you prepare these proposals, how much emphasis do you need to put on justifying the future use of your infrastructure, and how do you do that?
Well, I think it's again depending on the type of infrastructure. Of course, we have most of our infrastructure are very lightweight infrastructures. They are not, to say that they are not investments by governments for a very long time. It are most of the time very concise things developed by academics themselves. Also, our access is much more lightweight than we provide access to almost 250, 300 people. We have each call almost 50 applicants. We have 10 calls. So it's a totally different way, I think, but I agree with you. It's a very it depends again. We are in the integrated research infrastructures, which means, of course, it's not about investing in it's not a program whereby the European Union invests in the infrastructure. It's only investing in the access to the infrastructure. I think that's very important it's even not allowed to do capital, to include capital investments in your proposals. For example, in our case, it's about we give access to survey data, but we are not allowed to finance the survey with infrastructure projects, because it's only providing access. It says there are already very good infrastructures in Europe, and other people need the access to that. That's the main goal of the program. That's also very important to keep in mind, of course. That's the way. So it means, of course, that you on the one hand, of course, to show that there is a long-term future of your infrastructure. It will be there, and of course that this access will help to it, of course. But it doesn't mean, of course, that you can put money for this thing. The only thing that you can make, of course, that you can do in these projects is, is networking. To create networking around your infrastructure, that more people, not only the researchers but also stakeholders, are seeing the added value of it. And I think it's also important when you can go back to your national government and can you show that also on the European level it is recognized as a key infrastructure. I think it helps to get your money also at the national level. So it helps, of course, and that's what you can finance in these programs. You can do all the networking, of course. Because we plan to end our Ingrid 2 project with a kind of memorandum where not only the partners, but also some key stakeholders, and especially financiers of infrastructure, would say, yes, this is a very important infrastructure, and that it should be continued in the future. But of course, the program itself doesn't finance it.
Okay, if I may, actually, so we have focused a lot on access, and I think that makes some sense. And I guess after Lorenz's really comprehensive and actually very useful presentation from before the coffee break, it makes sense. But The one thing I guess we haven't heard of is the joint research activities that you're supposed to have also. I don't know if you have any highlights on that, because usually those are also very useful, at least for some communities, but I don't know how much weight they have on your projects, and if you have any advice on that too.
Yes, our joint research activities, I'm trying to think, it's probably around a third of the overall budget, something like that. And for us and for the partners, that's a key part of the whole program. And the point is that it allows joint research that normally wouldn't happen at that level, because in fact in our space people are very protective of what they're doing. So here's a program that we're developing new techniques through the joint research activities and new contamination studies that have never been done before. And we're coming up with data so that the data that comes out from these very individual facilities will be all presented in the same way. So in fact, for some partners that are very big and already have a lot going on already, it's this aspect that they see the buy-in. It's not really in response to the money coming in, because they need 100 million a year to keep going. So that, you know, they're €1 billion facilities. So, but the joint research, the networking, and the interaction with the users, we've had people come from all over the world doing things we didn't even know existed in those facilities, and it's really sparked great future collaborations as well. So the access part, I'm not sure if I'm not allowed to say this, but you wouldn't really do it for the money itself, because it's running costs only, but you would certainly do it for the future potential.
I mean, of course, I come from the poor part of the science. So I think for us, certainly in our first project, I think it was the main reason why the partners joined, of course, that they could do some research together, that they could finance some of their research themselves. And of course, it was about improving things that they use also by themselves. But if you now look to how we also maybe advance in this, I think I agree with what you were saying, that of course the access is, again, it's, yeah, like I said, it's not about, it's not a profit-making issue, but it's, of course, it gives you contacts and learning from each other. So it's not a unilateral. It's not that, of course, very often early stage researchers, or certainly in our case, early stage researchers. But even then, of course, you're expanding your network and your contacts to do research. So I think that is very important. And of course, the other aspect, and that's maybe again depending on the type of infrastructure. But for us, of course, it meant that we got also, because these projects have to be so big, that you join, of course, different types of sciences. Even I heard it also in your stories. For our, we have people from economics, people from sociology, people from law, and of course, and also even from totally different disciplines. In our social sciences, people who do research about poverty and welfare studies, or the people coming from working conditions, job quality, are totally different people. We learn a lot from each other, of course, because we are now in the same group, and we learn a lot how already things are evolved or advanced in the other group, and not in our group, or the other way around. And that, I think, is very, very, to say it, very an added value of this kind of projects, because it's interdisciplinary, I think.
And in our case, joint research activities are not fundamental research in mass spectrometry. They are devoted to have a better DNA. Clearly.
Yeah. Sure.
They were written like this, and not as fundamental research.
So, yes, Lorenza? Yeah.
As you may know, innovation can be done with working with industry. You can have industry as a user or as a supplier, and usually you can do so innovation through provision of access, or also in the joint integrating activity, developing some things with the industry and so raising its technological level. We have seen that usually industry as user, it should be a researcher anyway, or research, is a little bit less common because this take more place, especially with small and medium enterprise at local level. So it's difficult to have a user, transnational user that is me, that goes to an infrastructure that is in another country. They usually try to work with the infrastructure in their own country. So it's sometimes difficult that they are eligible for transnational access. What is your experience? Did you have a different experience? I mean, in previous workshop, we have noticed these things, but do you have a different experience? Did you arrive to, for example, involve a small and medium enterprise as users from another country, or
First, we are not focusing on enterprises, so
we have some SME users, but we don't have the large industry users, and I think that's because in the main, the way we have, because one of the measures of success is that you have a large number of users. So therefore your average project is probably going to be in the order of 10 person days or something like that. And really when we're working with the larger industries, they're looking for longer access, longer term access. They would also be reluctant to publish the results, which is the other side of it. So I think the nature of the access, if you want to keep up the number of users, kind of goes a little bit against using the major players. And as well, we would find that we probably are already working with quite a number of the larger players. But certainly for the SMEs, there is an opportunity there, and I think that's an area that we're trying to look at how we develop that. And that's in conjunction with our industry board, where maybe they can offer something outside that we can promote for them and bring in the SMEs that way.
And
thank you.
The data should be public after 18 months or something like that. Most of the data we have on industrial projects are very confidential. So they don't want to go in the national network or in the EU network, and they are better to have a collaboration directly with the lab without the need to share the data.
Okay, thank you. We are about time to go for lunch, but we still have one presentation. But you can still ask a question if you want. If anyone has a burning question. There's also, we know there's another representative from a starting community, right? If you have anything you'd like to share also from the process, or if anyone else who thinks their experience could contribute to this discussion. Otherwise, we just move to Daniela. Okay.
Thank you, Gael. And I'm going just to present briefly the RICH network and what are the main services we are implementing for you. Basically, we are the network of the national contact point for the research infrastructure, so including e-infrastructure, of course, because we don't forget the e-infrastructure part of the program. So we work at the national level basically because we give assistance to our national proposers to apply for the RI course. And it is important to be in a network. And why it is important? Because we would like to improve and professionalize the NCP service across Europe. Because you know that the NCP coming from different institutions, and there is also sometimes a turnover, no, among people. And so it is important to have an homogenized, high-level, and professionalized service for our stakeholders in our country. And this is the strength of a network. Also for you is the same. When you're participating in a project, in a transnational project, you have the occasion to learn on the other experience. So it is important not only for the next experience as an NCP to learn about the best practices of the former one, but it is also important for the former one to listen the experience of the other people, and in this way we can grow. So currently we are a big network. You can see here that we are about 53 persons coming from 40 different countries, and it is not only from the European side, but also from the international arena. And here you can see that there are many of our colleagues representing their country. So we had also yesterday a training with Commission for this call, and it is the way to be better prepared in order to better support you when you're preparing your proposal. But what are the main services for you, for the area ecosystem? We have organized 2 info days, and one of these 2 is now. So we, in cooperation with the European Commission, organized this workshop, this event, not workshop, but really the info day, on the work programs. The first one was on work programs 2016 and 17, and now we are covering 2018, 19, and also partly, we can say, of 2020, just as a wish of what will be included in the 2020 topics. And all the materials will be available on our website. All the events we organize are web streamed, so it is possible also to listen again the presentation after the event, and all these materials are available through our RICH website. We also, one of the main activities is also to provide the FAQ, and as Philippe mentioned this morning, we will have an updated version of the FAQ on the next course through our website, and also the questions that we collected today will be part of this update. One of the most important activity we do is the promotion of the transnational and virtual access, and we do not only have promote them among the research infrastructure community, because we know that you are already aware of this opportunity, but we will try to disseminate this really important opportunity also among other communities. We are referring to, for instance, to the other NCP network of Horizon 2020, so the thematic one. I'm referring to societal challenges that are really related to your fields of working. And we organized also other 2 important events, 2 symposiums, and the theme of the symposium are not really related to a specific call, but had a broader aspect. It covers a broader aspect of the infrastructure. So, for instance, we organized one on the funding instruments. So we cover not only the Horizon 2020 funding for the research infrastructure, but also other type of fundings, for instance, the ESIF or the structural funds that are really important when we speaking about of research infrastructure. And we had also a symposium on the innovation potential of research infrastructure. I am referring to these events because also in this case you can see the web streaming we had during that event in order to be aware also on these important aspects of the research infrastructure, and some of them are also important when you prepare your proposal now. And we have also a tool, the observatory, in our website, where you can find all the information related to the project already funded, the people that are involved in such project, and also, most important, the link of the connection of people, of institutions, also on countries that are working together in the field of the research infrastructure. And I think that that's it from my part. And now I thank you for your attention. And as you can see, we are ready to get home and support you for a successful project in the following course. So thank you. And I take this opportunity also to say, for sure, to thank you, Gael, because she was organizing this event and on behalf of RICH. So also thank you for your participation. And we will meet after lunch at 2:30 for the parallel session. But Gael, please, you know better than me, so if you can explain.
Just just to remind you, the parallel station start at 2:30, and please be at 2:30 in your different room. So now, before the parallel station, we have lunch at the first floor. It's in a restaurant. I don't remember the name. Magellan, I think. Yeah, it's a Magellan. It's at the first floor, and you have to come back. You have some room. You have room at, I think it's room Gagarin, it's at the second floor. You can see when you have probably seen it when you arrive for the plenary session, and the other room at the first floor, and all is mentioned. And concerning this parallel session, infra-EDI, I have a specific request. We will start at 2:30 until 3:30 because we had not so much people, but EC representative could not be there until 4:40. So, okay, it's a 1 hour session for the parallel session about infra-EDI. And thank you. So, please have a lunch. Thank you very much.